We'll pass on to Standing Orders number 53, subsection 1. Be seeking statements. The Senator for Kisumu County, Senator Tom Ojenda, will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters Finance and Budget regarding the utilization of the cess levied on sugarcane by the county government of Kisumu. Senator Chimera will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters Road, Transportation and Housing. The statement is in regards to the proposed installation of toll stations along the Dongo-Kundu bypass, a highway. Senator Ososi, the Senator for Vihiga County, will pass on to Standing Orders number 58, make a personal statement regarding his nomination to the position of a Deputy Party Leader of the Orange Democratic Movement, ODM. The leader of the majority party is this afternoon expected to table about 28 reports from the Office of the Auditor General. These are audit reports for various county governments in regards to how they utilized monies allocated to them. And away from that, the Speaker of the Senate this afternoon is also set to communicate to members in regards to a number of messages from the National Assembly. Among them is the National Assembly passage of the Cotton Industry Development Bill, the passage of the county government's additional allocation bills, Senate Bills number 19 of the year 2024, and finally, the decision by the National Assembly on the Senate amendments to the sugar bill. This is rather National Assembly Bills number 34 of the year 2022. The Land Amendment Bill, a bill from the National Assembly, Bill number 40 of the year 2022, is a bill that senators are lined up for debate. This is equally a resumption of debate that was interrupted on the 1st of August, the year being 2024. The Intergovernmental Relations Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 12 of the year 2024, is yet another bill that senators are set to resume debate on this afternoon, having been interrupted on the 8th of August, the year being 2024. And away from that, we currently have a number of bills that are currently at the second stage, or rather known as the second reading, where senators usually give their insights in regards to the proposals in the bill. Among them is the Heritage and Museums Bill, the Agriculture and Food Authority Amendment Bill, and the County Hall of Fame Bill. Allow me to hand over back to the chamber. Good afternoon.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Minority Leader, can you take your seat, please? Now, honorable senators, I take this opportunity to welcome you back to these regular sittings of the Senate. Indeed, it is my hope that you have had time to interact with your constituents, families, and friends over the last few weeks. I also hope the select committees took the opportunity during this recess to consider and conclude on pending business. In accordance with the calendar of the Senate, Part 4 would have seen the Senate transact business until the 17th of October 2024, with a 2-week break between 18th of October and 4th of November 2024. However, during a meeting of the Senate Business Committee held today, the 17th of September 2024, the committee deliberated on the modalities for varying the dates of the Senate Mashinani from the initial dates in September to the month of October 2024. For this reason, it is necessary for the Senate calendar for Part 4 to be altered. In this regard, at the appropriate time, the Senate Majority Leader will move a motion on the alteration of the Senate calendar to alter the dates for the Senate machinani. Honorable Senators, a major hallmark of Part 3 of the Senate calendar was the passage of a resolution on the current state of the nation on the 24th of July 2024. Honorable Senators will recall that a motion was introduced and moved in the Senate on the subject following countrywide protests by Gen Z in June 2024 due to their dissatisfaction with the policy direction that the country was taking. In the resolution, the Senate recommended that various government agencies and a number of select committees of the Senate take action on critical issues affecting the country. The select committees to which the recommendations were directed are therefore urged to report progress at an opportune time on the measures taken to actualize the recommendations in the resolution. Honorable Senators, resumption of sittings in Part 4 of the Senate calendar finds the Senate with an already full agenda. In terms of legislative business, a total of 58 bills are pending conclusion. 22 motions are pending conclusion. 22 petitions are due for reporting by respective standing committees, while 394 statements are pending conclusion by standing committees. In addition, questions have been scheduled in the order paper for Wednesday morning, following the reconstitution of the Cabinet. I urge all senators with scheduled questions to prioritize plenary sittings on Wednesday mornings to prosecute the business. Additionally, I implore upon standing committees to expedite the consideration of business pending before them and table reports pursuant to the standing orders. I also urge the Senate Majority Leader and the Senate Minority Leader to do all that is necessary within the standing orders so that the business before the Senate is fast-tracked. Honorable Senators, in conclusion, my office remains at your disposal to assist you in discharging your constitutional responsibilities. I will continue to support each senator individually and in the committees that you serve. I wish you the very best for the remainder of this session. Thank you. Next order.
Order number 3, messages.
Take your seats, honorable senators. I've got some messages to pass. Honorable senators, I wish to report to the Senate that pursuant to Standing Order 46.3, I received the following message from the Speaker of the National Assembly regarding the passage by the National Assembly of the Cotton Industry Development Bill, Senate Bills number 5 of 2023. The message dated the Tuesday, the 20th of August 2024, was received in the office of the Clerk of the Senate on the same date. Pursuant to Standing Order 46.4, I now report the message. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 41.1 and 144 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. That whereas the Cotton Industry Development Bill, Senate Bills number 5 of 2023, was passed by the Senate on Thursday, the 1st of August 2023, and referred to the National Assembly for consideration pursuant to the provisions of Article 110(4) of the Constitution, and whereas the National Assembly considered the said bill and passed it with amendments on Wednesday, the 14th of August 2024, in the form attached hereto. Now, therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Article 112 of the Constitution and Standing Orders 41.1 and 144 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the said decision of the National Assembly to the Senate. Honorable Senators, as you may recall, the schedule of amendments by the National Assembly to the said bill was circulated to all senators via a letter reference SEN/CO/LNP message 2024 into bracket 004 dated the 22nd of August 2024 pursuant to Standing Order 165.1. In order to facilitate the Senate in its consideration of the National Assembly amendments, I directed the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries to consider the amendments and table its report with recommendation on whether the Senate should adopt the said amendments the 17th of September 2024. Honorable Senators, the Senate Business Committee will, at an appointed time, schedule a motion for the consideration of the amendments by the Senate. Kindly be guided accordingly. Honorable Senators, I get to report to the Senate that pursuant to Standing Order 46.3 and 4, I received the following message from the Speaker of the National Assembly regarding the passage by the National Assembly of the County Government's Additional Allocations Bill, Senate Bills number 19 of 2024. The message, dated Tuesday, the 20th of August 2024, was received in the office of the Clerk of the Senate on the same date. Pursuant to the said standing order, I now report the message. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 41.1 and 144 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. Whereas the County Government's Additional Allocations Bill, Senate Bills number 19 of 2024, was passed by the Senate on Tuesday, the 11th of June 2024, and referred to the National Assembly for consideration pursuant to the provisions of Article 110(4) of the Constitution, and whereas the National Assembly considered the said bill and passed it with amendments on Wednesday, the 14th of August 2024, in the form attached hereto. Now, therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Article 112 of the Constitution and Standing Orders 41 and 144 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby refer the bill to the Senate for consideration. Honorable Senators, as you may recall, the schedule of amendments by the National Assembly to the said bill was circulated to all senators via letter reference SEN/O LNP/message.2024 into bracket 004, dated the 22nd of August 2024, pursuant to Standing Order 165.1. In order to facilitate the Senate in its consideration of the National Assembly amendments, I directed the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget to consider the amendments and table its report with recommendation on whether the Senate should adopt the said amendments today, Tuesday, the 17th of September 2024. Honorable Senators, the Senate Business Committee will, at an appointed time, schedule a motion for the consideration of the amendments by the Senate. The House is guided accordingly. I have a further message. I wish to report to the Senate that pursuant to Standing Order 46.3, I received the following message from the Speaker of the National Assembly regarding the decision of the National Assembly on the Senate amendments to the Sugar Bill, National Assembly Bills number 34 of 2022. The message, dated Tuesday, the 20th of August 2024, was received in the office of the Clerk of the Senate on the same date. Pursuant to Standing Order 46.5, I now report the message. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 41.1 and 148B of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. Whereas on the 27th of September 2023, the National Assembly considered and passed the Sugar Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2022, and thereafter referred it to the Senate in accordance with the provisions of Article 110(4) of the Constitution. And whereas on the 24th of April 2024, the Senate considered and passed the said bill with amendments and referred it back to the National Assembly for reconsideration in accordance with the provisions of Article 112(1)(b) of the Constitution. Further, whereas on the 1st of August 2024, the National Assembly approved part of the Senate amendments and rejected Senate amendments to clauses 2, 6, 19A, 29A2, 38(1)(b), 38(2), 59, new clause 19A, new clause 19B(c), and the proposed new schedule to the bill, thereby committing it to mediation committee in accordance with the provisions of Article 112(2)(b) of the Constitution. Now, therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Article 112 of the Constitution and Standing Orders 41.1 and 148B of the National Assembly standing orders, I hereby convey the said decision of the National Assembly to the Senate and seek the appointment of 7 senators to a mediation committee to consider the bill in accordance with the provisions of Article 113 of the Constitution. Honorable Senators, consequent to the said decision, the Speaker of the National Assembly appointed the following members of the National Assembly to the Mediation Committee to consider the contentious clauses in accordance with Article 113 of the Constitution. The Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe, CBS MP. The Honorable Dr. John Mutunga, MP. The Honorable Justice Kemei, MP. The Honorable John Okwisia Makali, MP. The Honorable Nabi Nabwara Daraja, MP. The Honorable John Walter Owino, MP. And the Honorable Peter Masara, MP. Now, Honorable Senators, pursuant to Article 113 of the Constitution and Standing Order 166(2) of the Senate, and in consultation with the Senate Majority Leader and the Senate Minority Leader, I appointed the following senators to the Mediation Committee. 1 Senator James Murango, MP. Senator Richard Onyonka, EBS, MP. Senator David Wakoli Wafula, MP. Senator Catherine Muma, MP. Senator Samson Cherankei, MP. Senator Agnes Kavindo Muthama, MP, and Senator Esther Okenyuri, MP. The names of the senators were communicated to the National Assembly via the letter reference N/LNP/MC.2024 into bracket 07, dated the 28th of August, 2024. Honorable Senators, the Mediation Committee will attempt to develop a version of the bill that both houses will pass and table its report in both houses of Parliament. The House is so guided. Thank you. Next order.
Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
The Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, Tuesday, the 17th of September, 2024. This is a pest control products registration regulations, legal notice number 130 of 2024. The annual report of the PSC for the financial year 2022-2023. The reports of the Commission on Administrative Justice on investigative report on the public officials' role in the Shakahola tragedy. Report of the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC, on the ethnic diversity audit of county public service for 2023. Report of the Controller of Budget on annual county government budget implementation review for the financial year 2023-2024. The report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Athi River Level 4 Hospital, County Government of Machakos for the year ended 30th June 2022. The report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Kibwezi Sub-County Level 4 Hospital, County Government of Makueni for the year ended 30th June 2022. A report on the Auditor General on the financial statements of Kiambu Sub-County Level 4 Hospital, County Government of Kiambu. Mr. Speaker. Reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Kambu Sub-County Level 4, County Government of Makueni for the year ended 30th June 2022. Reports of the Auditor General on the financial statement for the year ended 30th June 2022 for the following counties. Kisau Sub-County Level 4 Hospital, County Government of Makueni. Makindu Level 4 Hospital, County Government of Makueni. Athi River Level 4 Hospital, County Government of Machakos. Kalama Level 4 Hospital, County Government of Machakos. Makindu Level 4 Hospital, County Government of Makueni. Matiliku Sub-County Hospital, County Government of Makueni. Matiliku Sub-County Level Hospital, County Government of Makueni. Makueni County Referral Level 5 Hospital, County Government of Makueni. Makueni County Referral Level 5 Hospital, County Government of Makueni. Kibwezi Sub-County Level 4 Hospital, County Government of Makueni. Kisau Sub-County Level 4 Hospital, County Government of Makueni. Kalawa Level 4 Hospital, County Government of Makueni, Ikanga Sub-County Hospital, County Government of Kitui, Mutomo Level 4 Hospital, County Government of Kitui, Kaui Sub-County Hospital, County Government of Kitui, Kuso Level 4 Hospital, County Government of Kitui, Zombe Sub-County Hospital, Level 4, County Government of Kitui, Seikuru Level 4 Hospital, County Government of Kitui, Nu Level 4 Hospital, County Government of Kitui. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay.
Senator Veronica.
Let me proceed and do it for her, Mr. Speaker. I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate. This is the report of the parliamentary delegation to the 2024 Joint United Nations Interparliamentary Union parliamentary hearing held at the UN headquarters in New York, United States of America, from 8th to 9th of February 2024. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on behalf of Senator Veronica Maina.
Next order, Clerk.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
The Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion. This is the alteration of the dates for the sittings of the Senate in Busia County. Mr. Speaker, that aware that on the 11th of July 2024, pursuant to Article 126(1) of the Constitution, the Senate resolved to hold its plenary and committee sittings in Busia County from the 23rd to the 27th of September 2024, and acknowledging the recommendation of the Senate Business Committee to alter the dates of holdings of the sittings in Busia County and the need to put in place necessary measures for the successful sittings. Now, therefore, the Senate resolves to alter the dates for the Senate Mashinani in Busia County from 23rd to 27th September 2024 to 28th October to 1st of November 2024. Mr. Speaker, I have another notice. Can I proceed?
You may proceed.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, which is the alteration of the Senate calendar for the Part 4 of the third session, that notwithstanding the resolutions of the Senate made on the 15th of February 2024, which is the approval of the Senate calendar, and the 19th of August 2024, the alteration of the Senate calendar, pursuant to Standing Order number 32-4, the Senate further resolves to alter its calendar, regular sessions for the third session 2024 in respect of Part 4.2. 1. Continue with regular sittings until Thursday, 31st October 2024.
Order, Honorable Senators. Please take your seat and may the Majority Leader be heard in silence.
Proceed for recess on the 1st of November 2024 and resume regular sittings on Tuesday, the 12th of November 2024. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
There was a notice to be given by Senator Veronica. Maybe Majority Leader, you may proceed to...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Senator Veronica, allow me to give this notice of motion, which is a motion on the report of the parliamentary delegation to the 2024 Joint United Nations Interparliamentary Union parliamentary hearing held at the United Nations headquarters in New York, United States of America, from 8th to 9th of February 2024. Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that the Senate notes the joint report of the parliamentary delegation to 2024 Joint United Nations Interparliamentary Union parliamentary hearing held at the United Nations headquarters in New York, United States of America, from 8th to 9th of February 2024, laid on the table of the Senate today, Tuesday, the 17th of September 2024. I thank you.
Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Senator Professor Tom Ojenda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise under Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget regarding the utilization by the County Government of Kisumu of cess levied on sugarcane, particularly in the construction and rehabilitation. Mr. Speaker. Okay.
Order, honorable senators.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for...
You may proceed.
Yes. Mr. Speaker,
You don't need to strain, Professor. Just proceed. You're doing very well.
Yes, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget regarding the utilization by the county from the Standing Committee of Finance and Budget regarding the utilization by the county government of Kisumu of cess levied on sugarcane, particularly in the construction and rehabilitation of roads in the sugar belt zones in Kisumu County. In the statement, Mr. Speaker, the committee should, 1, explain the legal framework governing the collection and utilization of cess in Kisumu County. 2, provide a year-by-year breakdown of the total amount of funds collected by the county government of Kisumu from cess levied on sugarcane from the financial years 2013 to date, indicating the specific amounts paid by each company. 3, provide a list of all projects for the construction and or rehabilitation of roads in the sugar belt zones in Kisumu County undertaken during the same period that were fully funded by funds collected from cess. 4, furnish the Senate with all audit reports on the management and application of cess levied on sugarcane by the state county government from the financial years 2013-2014 to date. And lastly, explain any measures put in place to ensure the transparent utilization of funds collected from cess. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chimera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads, Transportation and Housing regarding the proposed tolling policy on the Dongokundu Bypass Highway, which has raised significant public concern. The highway will link Mombasa mainland west with Mombasa mainland south without getting into Mombasa Island. In the statement, Mr. Speaker, the committee should, number 1, detail the extent of public participation undertaken in coming up with the proposed tolling policy, listing the involved stakeholders and dates during which this was done. Number 2, clarify how the tolling policy will ensure equitable access to infrastructure for all citizens, regardless of the economic status, and state measures in place to minimize disparities in access to essential services and opportunities. Number 3, the committee should assess the economic impact that tolling the Dongokundu Bypass Highway will have on local communities, giving an analysis of how increased transportation costs may affect small businesses, commuters, the overall economic growth and competitiveness of products transported along the region. Number 4, Mr. Speaker, outline alternative funding mechanisms that have been considered for maintaining and expanding infrastructure, such as budget reallocations, international grants, and public-private partnerships, and provide an assessment of potential efficiency improvements within Kenya National Highways Authority to optimize existing resources. And lastly, provide analysis of the environmental impact of tolling concerning increased vehicle emissions due to potential congestion at toll booths, and state measures in place to ensure that infrastructure policies align with national commitments to reduce carbon emissions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also have another statement, Mr. Speaker, with your kind permission.
You may proceed, Honorable Senator.
Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labour and Social Welfare regarding the Talanta Hela project and the leadership dynamics within our national sports organization, Mr. Speaker. In the statement, the committee should, number 1, provide a report on the Talanta Hela project, including its progress, impact on the development of young talent in Kenya, and the challenges it faces. Number 2, detail the criteria for appointing leaders in national sports organizations and assess whether these criteria meet the needs and aspirations of our athletes. Number 3, explain how the government plans to advance the objectives of the Talanta Hela project, integrate these objectives with the reforms in sports leadership, and address issues related to administration and resource allocation within the project. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mazayo, the Minority Leader. That a statement pursuant to Standing Order 52.
Honorable Speaker, I've been deputized to make this statement on behalf of the Senate Minority Leader, the Honorable Stuart Mazayo. Honorable Speaker, this is a statement on the withdrawal of the security detail of the Honorable Justice Lawrence Mugambi. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 52.1 to make a statement on a matter of national and general topical concern, namely the withdrawal of the security of the Honorable Justice Lawrence Mugambi, Judge of the High Court of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, sir, on 13 September 2024, Honorable Justice Lawrence Mugambi issued a ruling in a contempt of court proceedings against Mr. Gilbert Masengeli, the Acting Inspector General of Police, sentencing him to 6 months in prison. This ruling has drawn a seemingly retaliatory action from the National Police Service, which withdrew the judge's security detail over the weekend. This action by the National Police Service is a violation of the rule of law and the principle of judicial independence enshrined in our Constitution. It is not only illegal, but outrightly unconstitutional. Mr. Speaker, sir, Article 160 of the Constitution provides for the independence of the judiciary and states that the judiciary shall be subject only to the Constitution and the law and not to be controlled or directed by any person or authority. The withdrawal of security for a sitting judge in response to his discharge of judicial duty is a direct contravention of this constitutional provision and must be condemned. Judicial officers must be at liberty to make decisions based on law, free from intimidation or coercion. Mr. Speaker, sir, I strongly condemn the intimidation of Honorable Justice Lawrence Mugambi. We must all take cognizance of the appeal processes provided in our laws for any party who feels dissatisfied with a court ruling, rather than resort to revenge missions against the judiciary. Such actions, Mr. Speaker, not only seek to undermine the authority of the courts, the administration of justice, but also suggest that judicial decisions can be influenced by external factors other than the law. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is imperative that we take note of these actions by the National Police Service and their potential impact on our judicial system. As a retired judge and Senate Minority Leader, I have also suffered the wrath of holding the executive accountable that resulted in the withdrawal of my security detail. This unjust behavior of the National Police Service of withdrawing security detail without stated and justifiable reasons for the same must stop henceforth. Mr. Speaker, sir, we must respect the principle of separation of powers and uphold the rule of law. The independence of the judiciary is a fundamental tenet enshrined in our Constitution. It is essential for the protection of human rights, promotion of fairness, and upholding of democratic values. The judiciary must be allowed to operate free from external pressures and interference, ensuring that every case is heard and adjudicated based solely on its merits. Mr. Speaker, we must safeguard judicial independence and ensure that the judiciary can fulfill its role without compromise. Let us uphold the principles of justice, fairness, and the rule of law for the benefit of all Kenyans. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senator Justice Retired Stuart Mazayo, EGH MP, Senator for Kilifi County. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Osotsi.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 58 to make a personal statement regarding my nomination by the Orange Democratic Movement ODM party to serve as the deputy party leader. Mr. Speaker, sir, in light of the significant vacancies created by the recent resignation of our two deputy party leaders, as well as the national chairperson of ODM, the Secretary of Political Affairs, and a member of the Party Election Coordinating Committee, the Party Central Committee convened on the 9th of August 2024 to deliberate on the critical leadership matters. These departures stirred substantial interest within our party, demonstrating the dedication and passion of the members towards the leadership and future of the party. Mr. Speaker, sir, I stand here with profound gratitude to our party leader, Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, and the entire ODM fraternity for placing their trust in me for this important role. My nomination as the deputy party leader is not only a personal honor, but also a reflection of the party's confidence in this Senate. And the essential role we play in the governance of our nation. ODM has been a strong pillar in the promotion of devolution and the passage of the Constitution of Kenya, which remains central to our democracy. My selection is a reaffirmation of the party's unwavering belief in the principles of devolution, which we senators are entrusted to safeguard. As I embrace this responsibility, Mr. Speaker, I pledge to serve our party with the same dedication and integrity that have guided many of us in our various capabilities. I extend my deepest appreciation to all those who supported me, including my friend and SG Edwin Sifuna, Siaya Senator Oburu Odinga, and all the ODM members in this house. And in present and former ODM members.
Order.
And encourage those who were not selected to unite with us in advancing and strengthening our party mission. Together, we continue to build on the legacy of ODM and lead the party to greater success for the betterment of our nation and the devolution process, which is dear to this House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Now, honorable senators, order, Senator Sifuna. Pursuant to Standing Order 53.3, I will allow comments on the statements that have been sought under Standing Order 53. And that excludes the statement by Senator Mazayo, read on his behalf by Senator Sifuna, and the statement by Senator Osotsi. So your comments shall be restricted to the statements made pursuant to Standing Order 53.1. Senator Manzo Daniel. Read your standing orders, honorable senators. Senator Manzo.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had prepared myself to make comments on Senator Sifuna's matter, but unfortunately from your ruling, then I am unable to proceed.
Then take your seat. Senator Chiranke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me, I hope you'll allow understanding order number 1 as I contribute of your discretion. One, I wanted to say something about CES.
I've made a ruling.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank that CES money in Nandi we have not seen, especially on the issue of sugar and tea. I want to thank Senator Professor Tom Ojenda for bringing that up. The deputy party leader of ODM, who is my neighbor from Vihiga. We are working closely under the broad base, Mr. Speaker, to address the issue of CES. I have had a sitting and I'm happy that he enjoys unlimited access to broad-based engagement within government as the deputy party leader so that we can discuss the issue of CES going into the future, Mr. Speaker. I want to encourage my professor, when the committee shall be looking into this matter, Professor Tom Ojenda, which of late I have seen him wearing more of orange colors and like before, and I hope the SG is noting that we need to ensure we demand the CES money. Should it be done by KERA? Should it be given to Kura or county governments to go into the future, Mr. Speaker? So even, Mr. Speaker, as we look at the cess money across Kericho County, Bomet, Nandi, Vihiga, Mr. Speaker, where our deputy party leader of ODM comes from, we must sit as a committee, Speaker, and as a house to audit this money, Mr. Speaker. You remember when you were the governor of Kilifi, which you left a very indelible mark in terms of governance and leadership in that county, you used to receive what we call RMF, Road Maintenance Levy Fund, Mr. Speaker. And I'm happy I have some long enough in public accounts, and you are a very good client when you used to appear before our committee, Mr. Speaker. And I'm happy you continue to maintain the same tradition, Mr. Speaker. So I want to insist that the issue of taking road maintenance levy fund to counties should be returned, Mr. Speaker. The issue of cess money should be given to the roads, Mr. Speaker, so that we can have roads in Nandi, in anywhere, even in Kisumu, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this statement and also wish the deputy party leader of ODM all the best. He has our support, Mr. Speaker. We will ensure we support him before the floor of the House. But out of curiosity, ODM has never brought even one governor in the spirit of devolution so that we can impeach or not. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sifuna.
Honorable Chair, allow me to comment on the statement that has been requested by Senator Raphael Chimera on this issue of tolling along the Dongokundu bypass. Indeed, we at the Senate Transport Committee, which is ably chaired by Senator Thangwa, have had resolved to invite the Minister for Transport to give us the government's position, the Kenya Kwanza government's position on tolling on roads. Because, Honorable Speaker, just, you must protect me, Honorable Speaker.
Order. Majority Leader. Majority Leader. You're the Majority Leader for Kenya Kwanza government.
Correct.
Proceed.
Honorable Chair, thank you for that protection. We as the Transport Committee wanted to know what the government, the Kenya Kwanza government position is on road tolling. Because, Mr. Speaker, we wake up one day and we hear that here in Nairobi they are going to start tolling Thika Road, for instance, a road that was built using taxpayer money. And Kenyans have been using these roads all this time. You cannot just wake up one day and start tolling Thika Road or even the Southern Bypass. Honorable Speaker, we had proposed to summon the ministry so that they come and tell us what the policy position is. But I was very happy reading the papers this week that out of that outcry, the public outcry, they have abandoned that path and that they would come up with a new tolling policy for the roads that have been constructed, especially the ones recently, including the Dongokundu bypass. Honorable Chair, we still continue to see you know, in the calculation of the prices of fuel, even this month, the Kenya Kwanza government, Honorable Speaker, is insisting on rates that have been even declared unconstitutional and unleviable by the courts, Honorable Speaker. So we want to know what the policy is. And the people of Dongokundu might not be as lucky as the people of Thika Road and the Southern Bypass, Honorable Speaker, because that is a fairly new road. And if they start off by tolling it, maybe it would be different from the policy whereby you allow people to use roads and then out of the blue, you decide that you're going to toll those roads. So, Honorable Speaker, I want in the response, the committee must insist that one of the problems we have is there is no clarity of government policy. It is not fair for people to be ambushed every day by changes of policy. Even, I wish the chair of Transport Committee was here. Even on this question of concessions to the airport, Honorable Speaker, the problem is that, one of the problems is that this government does not know how to communicate its policy. We were here with you, Honorable Speaker, in November of last year, when the then CS, Honorable Kipchumba Murkomen, told us that they were going to put out an international tender to invite expressions of interest to upgrade Jkia, only for us to be told now, months later, in fact, he had told us that the international tender would go out in January of this year. And then you hear again that there is a different process that is going on under the PPP Act. That confusion and lack of miscommunication on when policy changes and the lack of involvement of the public in policy decisions is what is bringing this problem. So I'm hoping, Mr. Speaker, that when the committee deals with this issue, there can be some formal clarification of what the government policy is on tolling. This tolling, Speaker, we had abandoned it because we introduced RMLF. that instead of charging tolls on the road, let us put it as part of a cost of fuel, and then we use it to maintain our roads. If there has been a policy shift, I think it is incumbent upon the government to say, this is now the new policy. We have abandoned RMLF, we are going back to tolling. It will begin on such a day on all the roads of Kenya or certain particular roads. But for things to be happening like this, Honorable Speaker, shrouded in secrecy and lack of clarity of policy is what is bringing problems for the Kenya Kwanza government. So I can advise you from outside, Honorable Majority Leader, Honorable Speaker, from outside, those of us who are outside government, what we are saying, those of us who are outside government, Honorable Speaker, I want to advise this government that communication is key and clarity in policy is important if you're going to win the support of the people. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Oroba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to add my voice on two statements. First, on one statement by Senator Chimera. Before that, I want to congratulate Senator Osotsi for his new position as the Deputy Party Leader of ODM. We are very happy to see you there, and I'm sure that my governor of Kisii County...
Senator Oroba.
Okay.
You're out of order.
Congratulations, Senator Osotsi. Okay, on the statement of Senator Chimera on the Talanta Hela project, Mr. Speaker, there are three issues that, that Senator Chimera has raised, and two of them touch on how we are developing talents. And I think I want to ask Senator Chimera to go and look for Senator Sifuna's proposed bill on the county sports fund, because some of the issues that he's raising on these statements are actually being cured there. Mr. Speaker, we have had a situation where we had a former minister of sports who launched an app that until today is not working, Mr. Speaker. And that Talenta Hela is theoretically supposed to be a project that actually deals with these sports issues from end to end, Mr. Speaker. I hope that our new sports minister, who has just been sworn in, will be able to address these issues, because, Mr. Speaker, as we are talking about sports and trying to devolve it to the county level, there are several issues, including that on this statement where Senator Chimera is asking for a detailed criteria for appointing leaders in national sports organization. Mr. Speaker, most of these organizations have had the same leaders for over 10 years. And they are not holding elections, and there's an issue of cartelism there. So you have a situation where, as a national government, we are trying to develop our sports, but the institutions and the organizations that are there are so rotten that we are unable to go to the grassroots and do what is there. So as a member of the Labor Committee, this statement is being sent there, Mr. Speaker, I want to also encourage most of those who are interested to go about the county sports fund and find out what are the issues that we are trying to cure there. I think that is a good bill. And Mr. Speaker, I still want to congratulate Senator Osotsi and my governor for Kisii County, who's also a deputy party leader. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
No. Senator Gloria, you cannot defy the ruling of the chair. I'm tempted to ask you to withdraw, but since it's the first day, you will remain in for the remainder of the afternoon. Senator Wafula. Senator Wafula. Good. We now proceed to the next order. Majority Leader, you know the challenges we have with the system. I don't have any name on my... You may proceed, Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I want to react to two statements. One is the first one by Senator Professor Ujenda, my good neighbor, on these cesses that are levied by county governments. Mr. Speaker, in the second Senate, immediately after the promulgation of the new constitution and this House came into being, we put up a spirited fight to stop county governments from levying cess on farmers, particularly tea farmers. And actually, Mr. Speaker, in the Budget and Finance Committee, we forced KTDA to refund monies to the farmers through their county governments, because we held the view then, and we still hold the same view right now, Mr. Speaker, that it is actually double taxation. The farmers of any crop, be it sugarcane, like what Senator Ojenda is talking about, tea, cotton, coffee, whatever, pay their fair share of taxes. Therefore, they deserve to receive as much service as anybody. But given the financial difficulties and space that you are in as a country, Mr. Speaker, we have come to accept that charging cess and levies perhaps may be a way to better strengthen and give advantage to our farmers with regards to various things. For example, repair of roads in the fields and such like things, Mr. Speaker. However, Mr. Speaker, I am disturbed. The reason I'm disturbed, Mr. Speaker, is because county governments don't help their cause. We might be here as Senate and are interested in pushing the cause of devolution. But given how county governments continue to treat the farmers, Mr. Speaker, I know of counties, Mr. Speaker, where farmers have been levied cess on transportation and other things, but 2 or 3 financial years down the line, that money is accumulated in the accounts of county governments with no roads being done in the particular regions where they had collected that particular money. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, unless counties are ready to provide and give good account of the monies that they collect from our farmers, as a House, Mr. Speaker, I hold the view that we should not allow them to pursue that particular route. Mr. Speaker, and this is known in open public, I had engagement, Mr. Speaker, last week with sugarcane farmers for my county. They know that the sugar bill is now on the mediation stage. And you know that there is a debate between the Senate and the National Assembly. Part of the amendments the National Assembly has rejected is a proposal by the Senate, Mr. Speaker, to have the road levies, or part of the cess money actually do roads in the sugarcane zones, Mr. Speaker, to be done by county governments. The National Assembly holds the view that that monies need to go to Kera. Mr. Speaker, when I asked the farmers, who do you prefer that we take this money to? I instruct me as your representative so that as I go to speak out on your behalf, they were unequivocal and clear. They said, please give this money to Kera. If you give it to county governments, we'll never see this money. Therefore, unless counties, Mr. Speaker, become prudent in how they use these resources, it will be a long time before citizens trust them with the levies, much as we are pushing for these resources to go to county governments, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I hold the view that Senator Ojenda is right in his place, and I hope the Budget and Finance Committee, Mr. Speaker, can do justice, Mr. Speaker, to the people of this republic by ensuring that they put in place mechanism, a time period within which if a county charges cess to farmers, they need to dispense with either provide the service to Wananchi or return that money if they are able to procure the services that are needed, Mr. Speaker. Finally, is on the issue of cess, road tolling, Mr. Speaker, that has been brought by Senator Chimera. This matter is not as simple as Senator Sifuna wants to put it, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Gloria, you're out of order. Standing Order 117. You cannot walk in between the Speaker and the Senator speaking. That is exactly what you've done. Proceed, Majority, and conclude.
By saying this issue of the toll roads is not as simple as many of our colleagues want to put it. Mr. Speaker, I represent the people of Kericho in this House. I know that the government, for example, wants to build a road from Rironi here in Nairobi all the way to Malaba. And it's supposed to be a toll road. The people I represent in this House, Mr. Speaker, continue to pay for the loans that were taken to build Thika Road, to build that Dogokundu, and so many other roads that have been done elsewhere. Tell me why, in my rightful mind, Mr. Speaker, I need to stand and say I defend that citizens of a particular part of the country where monies that were borrowed by the Republic of Kenya were used to do roads for them, and they are driving on those roads free of charge, while my own citizens, as they travel up country, Mr. Speaker, have to pay to use these so-called toll roads. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, This conversation must be holistic. It is not as simple as just saying that don't toll this one, don't toll the other one. Mr. Speaker, we have to classify our roads, and the Ministry of Roads and Transportation must come before this House, Mr. Speaker, and set a limit beyond which, when the government of Kenya, either by funds that have been appropriated by Parliament or, Mr. Speaker, through loans, have built road in various parts of the country, if a certain threshold is reached on the amount of money spent on a road, Mr. Speaker, then we need to agree. Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of order, Senator Sifuna?
Point of order is that the majority leader is misleading the House, Honorable Speaker, because it is not true to say that...
What is this standing order that is being contravened?
105 on statement of fact, Honorable Speaker.
Then state as much,
yes.
Senator Sifuna.
Honorable Speaker, it is not correct to say that the people that are represented by the majority leader, the people of Kericho, I assume, are the only ones who are paying for the roads, or that they don't use the roads that were built using our taxes. I can assure the majority leader that even residents of Kericho, they get to benefit from use of Thika Road in the Southern Bypass, because they don't just stay in the village, as has been demonstrated by he himself, because he's from Kericho, but he doesn't drive on roads from Kericho, or in Kericho only when he's here. I have seen him in other parts of the country, and he used the same roads, Honorable Speaker. So it is not proper for him to make that assertion, that the people of Kericho are paying for roads they don't use, because they use those roads, Honorable Speaker.
Majority Leader, kindly proceed to conclude your...
No. Mr. Speaker, Senator Sifuna is completely lost, and I don't think understands what I'm trying to say. Mr. Speaker, the point is, there's a specific reason why a road is built to a particular place. The reason why a road is built to a particular region or location is because the people that head to that particular region or part of the country use it more than others. You cannot say that because I drive on Thika Road once every 5 years when I'm going to watch a football match, Mr. Speaker, at Moi International Sports Center, Kasarani, then my people have used that particular road. It's not the same as a road that goes from Westlands here to Total in Nakuru County as I drive home, Mr. Speaker, over the weekend. Therefore, the point that I'm trying to make, and I hope that colleagues can be convinced, is that the conversation on tolling of our roads, Mr. Speaker, cannot be limited to just particular roads that have been built over a period of time. It must be based on value. That is what the rest of the world does, Mr. Speaker. If government spends money beyond a particular limit, then that particular road is tolled. It doesn't matter whether it's done now, it was done yesterday, or in 1963, Mr. Speaker. So that the principle of equity is observed. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Boni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to comment on the statement by Professor Ojanda, and I want to agree with him that the issue of use and misuse of cess is a matter of grave national importance. Mr. Speaker, I wish to combine that with the clarification required by Senator Chimera on the Dongo Kundu. On Dongo Kundu Road, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the leader of the majority has been spot on. Whereas emotions of defending devolution are forcing us to disagree with the National Assembly that money of cess should not go to Kura, instead it should come to counties. On the ground, matters are not the same. People don't want, including, Mr. Speaker, during the recess, I was twice on a road which is now impassable from Kambia Mwanza, Mr. Speaker, to Ibakale, to Ikambiri, to Shiamberere, Mr. Speaker, Ikirobani, up to Rondo and Shinyalu, and the people were there with the twigs, with the bananas planting on the road, saying that their governor must go, because he is not fixing that road. Why am I quoting it? It is because this is a road that traverses between Shinyalu and Malaba, net producers of sugar. And in those areas, we have West Kenya, it pays cess. you have Butali Sugar, it pays cess, and if it is as if it's not enough, even Mumias Sugar itself pays cess. The governor, for the last 2 years, has never spent a single cess on any road to justify the money that he collects as cess. Before devolution, Mr. Speaker, the defunct local authorities, when cess used to be given, they were fixing our roads. Mr. Speaker, I'm not in the habit of activism because I am a respected national leader. I am not in the habit of picketing because I don't believe that sufurias can be hats and caps. And therefore, when you see me join Wananchi in saying that the activism of Governor so-and-so must go, it is because there is justification. Even if there are no roads in Kericho, in Kilifi, Mr. Speaker, where you come from, or a challenge of roads in Meru, for example, you do not have the luxury of cess that we collect in Kakamega and in Bungoma and in Busia. I therefore want to put the governors of Busia, governors of Kakamega, governors of Bungoma, governors of Kisumu, governors of Homa Bay, governors of Migori on notice because they are abusing cess. The primary intention of cess, Mr. Speaker, was to fix the roads so that Ken cannot road on farms. They are not doing it. Instead, Mr. Speaker, sadly, and I congratulate the control of budget, she has now firmly told us, and members, I urge you to visit the website of the control of budget, the shame that she has exposed in our counties. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, sir, she's telling us how your governors use the money that we fight for here once it is in their custody. Mr. Speaker, that a county like Kakamega can spend a whooping 418 million shillings, 640,000, purely for purposes of flying around. They fly in and out of Dubai, in and out of Washington, in and out of everywhere at the cost of Mwananchi. When the same 418 million, Speaker, is the same money that we are asking for to be spent on compensating people in Miranda Ward who are supposed to be resettled, so that we construct the new airport. Instead of committing that money to that development expenditure, the governor of Kakamega chooses to enjoy, as President Kibaki would say in this house, to enjoy. That's how Kibaki used to say it. Mr. Speaker, this issue of how we are spending our money, it must become the main debate here soon after we pass the Division of Revenue Bill. Right now, we are fighting hard as a committee to ensure that the government does not effect the deduction from 400.1 billion due to county governments to 380. But I ask myself, why are we struggling when the money, Mr. Speaker, is going to be misused? Mr. Speaker, I cannot stop without congratulating the governor of Homa Bay, Gladys Wanga, the governor of Nairobi, Johnson Sakaja. They have led in raising on-source revenue. This is commendable, together with the 14 other governors who has led, including Professor Nyong'o. He raised his by 45.8%. We want to congratulate this kind of governance. But even as we congratulate Governor Sakaja, we want again to ask Governor Sakaja, it is not enough for you just to tell us how you collected 12.9 billion shillings from on-source. You should also tell us how you're using that money. If Governor Sakaja was using those billions well, which are collected from us, the residents of Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, we would not be seeing all this garbage. Blocked sewers. You are on Mombasa Road, you see blocked sewers. There's raw sewage moving around. In fact, it is forcing the minister, Minister Duale, CS Duale, the one in charge of environment, Mr. Speaker, he was speaking as if he wants to run the county government of Nairobi. Cleaning up River Nairobi should not be the work of the national government. The devolved government of Nairobi is the most funded county in this country. It is the one which controls the biggest economy in this, among the 47 counties. It should be able to give us services. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this chance.
Senator Gloria, you continue being out of order. You know, under Standing Order 98, and I want to believe you have a copy of the Senate Standing Orders, you can only raise on a point of order when another senator is contributing. No one is contributing, as you can see. So whom do you want to call to order? Let's leave it there. Next, Senator Wamatinga.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also rise to support the statement by Senator Professor Tom Ojiende. Indeed, it is very important that we hold the county governments into account into how they spend the revenue that has been raised. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate all the governors of all the county governments that made it to increase their own source revenue. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is indeed the high time that we came up with innovative means and mechanism of raising our own source revenue. But, Mr. Speaker, I would want also to challenge ourselves as senators. It is the high time that we start defining the empowerment programs that are being undertaken by various county governments. Mr. Speaker, sir, lack of this definition has seen all manners of empowerment programs being employed, and it leaves a lot of questions as to what should be an empowerment program. Mr. Speaker, sir, I know that for devolution to work, people at the machinary level, at the grassroots, must feel that there is money that has been devolved, services that have been devolved, but most important, Mr. Speaker, they want to see sustainable development that will change their lives. That begs the question, Mr. Speaker. If we fail to define two things, one, what is empowerment? Two, what is public participation? We've seen in various county governments, Mr. Speaker, without wanting to name any, where public participation is held, a few members of public comes, and it is deemed to be public participation, where they make a decision, and this very same decision, Mr. Speaker, is contested in a court of law, and it is thrown out. Mr. Speaker, sir, maybe it is the high time as senators we came up with a formula of defining what is the spirit of public participation. What did our Constitution intend to achieve by saying that there must be a public participation? We must look at the composition. Who must attend, Mr. Speaker, sir? Is it enough to have 10 people attend a public participation where a decision is ought to be made that is going to affect hundreds of thousands of people? And if these 10 people come, Mr. Speaker, what is the composition of these 10 people? We must look at that, Mr. Speaker, sir. As we go ahead and beg a leave from the likes of Senator Professor Tom Ojiende, who understands the spirit of the Constitution of this country and who understands the law, we must come up with a formula so that the counties that are not endowed with highly literate minds do not suffer at the hands of selfish governors who would go and spin the law so that they can force laws on public laws and judgments to be made by the public, only for the public to realize later that they end up harming themselves. Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Wamatinga, do you wish to be informed?
Well, I'll let her inform me in private because I think she'll take a little bit long. So that is okay, but that one will happen in
other
private.
words, you've denied. Proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I know that it is very important to tap on the resources and the knowledge of my fellow colleagues, but it is also equally very important to choose where you want to tap on that knowledge. I'll go and approach her after this, Mr. Speaker. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I think if we want to see the advancement of the devolution in our counties, it is important that we look at the things that our people complain of. I do recall, Mr. Speaker, when we had an impeachment debate in this House, the word empowerment fell several times. I heard from both sides of the people who are prosecuting their cases here try to say this is empowerment, this threshold does not meet empowerment. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I think as diverse as this country is, as diverse as our counties are, it would be good to come up with a threshold where we say is giving a cup, is giving a spoon, is giving a knife empowerment. Mr. Speaker, sir, I've seen some counties do all manners of things in terms of empowerment. The question that I would want us to discuss as senators is how can we define this threshold to ensure that Kenyans are not taken for a ride. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support the statement.
Next order.
Order number 8, the Environment Laws Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 23 of 2024, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Forest Conservation and Management Act to make further provisions for afforestation and reforestation of Kenya, to promote tree planting in all counties, to amend the Climate Change Act to provide for the settling and formation of strategies to achieve annual carbon sequestration targets and for connected purposes.
Next order.
Order number 9, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 27 of 2024. First reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Public Finance Management Act to provide for the submission, consideration, and passage of county finance bills.
Next order.
Order number 10, the County Library Services Bill, Senate Bills number 40 of 2024, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the establishment of county libraries in each county, the establishment of County Library Development Committee in each county, the functions and powers of each County Library Development Committee, and for connected purposes.
Next order.
Order number 11, motion. Consideration of the National Assembly amendments to the Equalization Fund Appropriation number 2 Bill, Senate Bills number 30 of 2023. Question to be put.
Now, honorable senators, the debate on this motion had concluded. I will now proceed to put the question, but before I do that, clerk, do we have the requisite quorum? Now, honorable senators, voting shall be by voice, and therefore I'll proceed to put the question. Unless the chair from that committee has any other observations, I'll proceed to put the question.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. We had actually debated on this. I just want to clarify that the issue with the bill from the National Assembly on the amendment of the Equalization Fund is that they reduced 10 billion, and hence the resolution of the committee was to reject the amendments. And hence, I would urge my colleagues.
That report was laid before the plenary.
Correct.
And, I think the members are adequately informed on what to do.
They were actually asking me what's the issue, and I thank you for allowing just me to put the voice and ask them and request them to vote no.
No, you cannot campaign, Chair. I'm afraid you may not be able to have that attitude. Now, honorable senators, I'll proceed to put the question that the National Assembly amendments to the Equalization Fund Appropriations number 2 Bill, Senate Bill number 30 of 2023, be now considered. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The nays have it. Next order.
Order number 12, motion. Report of the Select Committee on County Public Accounts and on its consideration of the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of West Pokot County Assembly for the financial year 2018-2019 and reports of the Auditor General of the financial statements of Isiolo, Kiambu, Kitui, Marsabit, Narok, Nyamira, Trans Nzoia, West Pokot, and Buranga County Assemblies for the financial year 2019-2020. Resumption of debate division.
Now, this particular order is deferred. Next order.
Order number 13, the Constitution of Kenya Amendment number 2 Bill, Senate Bills number 52 of 2023, resumption of debate, second reading division.
We will defer order 13. Next order, clerk.
Order number 14, the Local Content Bill, Senate Bills number 50 of 2023, second reading division.
That order is also deferred. Next order.
Order number 15, the Early Childhood Education Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 54 of 2023, second reading division.
That order is deferred. Next order.
Order number 16, motion. Report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the Senate nominees on behalf of county governments to the position of member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, SRC.
Now, honorable senators will recall that when debate was interrupted on the 6th of August 2024, Senator Moses Kajwang was on his feet and had a balance of 15 minutes. I don't see him in the House, and therefore this motion is still very much on the floor. It's open to debate. So there being no senators wishing to further contribute to this motion, Senator Chirange, I can see your name on my dashboard, but your physical being was not felt. Plus, you had already spoken to this motion. Yes. From the record, you had already contributed to this motion. So there being no other senator wishing to contribute, I will ask the mover to reply. Senator Boni, if you're not in a position to reply, we may defer so that you prepare yourself accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, indeed, I'm the one who moved this motion on behalf of the chair of the committee, and I'm glad that a number of members were able to contribute in support of the nomination, Mr. Speaker, of one Lynette Washiali as a member of this commission, Mr. Speaker. I thank all the members who spoke in support of this motion. And Mr. Speaker, without belaboring the debate, I want to request that members, again, as you have demonstrated on Equalization Fund, stand with the report of the Senate Finance and Budget Committee and vote to support this decision. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, honorable senators, I will at that juncture defer that order.
Mr. Speaker, before I had failed to draw your attention that Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Standing Order number 66.3, I requested the putting of the question be put to another day, Mr. Speaker.
Very well.
Thank you.
So ordered. Next order.
Order number 17, the Land Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 40 of 2022, second reading.
Now, when debate was interrupted on Thursday, 1st of August 2024, the Honorable Senator Peris Tobiko was contributing and had a balance of 3 minutes. Honorable Senator, you may proceed to take your 3 minutes. The Land Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 40 of 2023. Senator Sifuna.
Mr. Speaker, I think I was done. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Senator Sifuna.
Honorable Speaker, let me state that I rise to support this bill that seeks to amend the land regime in this country. Mr. Speaker, this is a very brief bill. If you look at it, I can count only one material section, actually, because it is Section 3 that seeks to now provide for a regime of registration of land that is held by a public body or institution, being able to apply to the registrar for the registration of public land allocated by the Commission in the prescribed form. Mr. Speaker, here in the county of Nairobi, and I'm sure across the country, we have had serious challenges with the registration of land that is owned by public entities and public bodies. And in fact, Honorable Chair, we had occasion one time to have a conversation with the governor of Nairobi. I think it was before the Committee of Transport and Roads and Housing. And when the question was put to him on whether the land for the old city council estates, which are earmarked for redevelopment, Honorable Speaker, the county government had titles for those pieces of land. His answer at that particular moment in time was in the negative. So, Honorable Speaker, the challenges that we face, especially in Nairobi with public land, is that for as long as a piece of land remains untitled, it is susceptible and exposed to the land grabbers and other nefarious characters who want to take this land away from the public. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the highest number of complaints reaching my office now are about land that has been grabbed. Just today, I have received at least 2 of those, and Honorable Speaker, it is becoming too much. And I have had even senior leaders in government now complain that we must stem this specter of land grabbing. Any piece of land that has been set aside, even in estates, Honorable Speaker, for a public use, these days you wake up and a wall is going up, and you hear that a private developer has taken it up. To the extent, Honorable Speaker, when the then CS of land appeared before this House, CS Alice Wahome, when she was CS for lands, Honorable Speaker, she told this House that somebody had actually grabbed the land on which Tomboya Social Hall was standing. And I'm happy that at that particular moment in time, she had assured the people of Nairobi that we were going to recover the land upon which Tomboya Social Hall sits and make sure that it is never grabbed again. Honorable Speaker, unfortunately, the intervening events meant that there were changes in the ministry, and we hope that going forward, government will ensure the sanctity of these pieces of land. And I am happy, Honorable Speaker, with this amendment, now requiring even the registration of land that is set aside by persons or even land belonging to land buying companies, Honorable Speaker, for a public purpose. I remember, again, in the session last year, the CS for Education was before this House, Honorable Speaker, and we had confronted him with the spectre of Visaoshwal Primary School, which, if you ask your regular Nairobian or anybody in Kenya, will tell you it's a public primary school. But yet, it was being claimed by the Oshwal community, Honorable Speaker, which is a private entity. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, we want to make sure that that gap that was there in registration of such pieces of land is closed, so that we can have title deeds for all land that is allocated to public bodies, or even land that is donated by individuals and land buying companies for purposes of a public purpose. Honorable Speaker, this will see the end of these disputes that we have between private persons, private individuals, and the so-called land grabbers and public bodies, because every time what happens is, for as long as the public body, such as your county government or even a national government institution, does not have the title deed, that is what creates the leeway for people within the lands departments and other places to come up with forged documents, Honorable Speaker, and you hear that land that was set aside for a public purpose has been grabbed. Therefore, Speaker, without going into too much, this is an amendment that is timely. I believe that it is responding to a real problem, and we need to move with haste to pass it, and we are hoping that once titling is complete and all the public spaces have title deeds registered in the public bodies that own them, then, Honorable Speaker, we can cut down on the cases or the number of cases that involve public grabbing of public spaces in our counties. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
There be no other senator wishing to contribute, I will call upon the mover to reply.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank all the senators that have taken time to contribute to the Land Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 40 of 2022. Quite a straightforward bill that will secure the interests of our public institutions, which have fallen prey, Mr. Speaker, to these land grabbers that are so vicious across the length and breadth of our republic, Mr. Speaker, but mostly actually targeting vulnerable public institutions. And it's for obvious reasons, Mr. Speaker, because public institutions are not necessarily owned by anybody, so to speak, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, on many occasions, Mr. Speaker, they fall victim to these dubious characters who go and change, Mr. Speaker, land records and alter boundaries. Almost every public institution in this country, Mr. Speaker, especially those that have big parcels of land, from technical training institutions, universities, Mr. Speaker, and hospitals, Mr. Speaker, have fallen prey at one time or another, Mr. Speaker, to these kind of schemes. In fact, Mr. Speaker, you do know for a fact that almost every university in this country is in court with one character or another, from Nairobi University, Jomo Kenyatta, Moi University, all these, especially the old universities, Mr. Speaker, that the previous governments, Mr. Speaker, had taken time to allocate them sufficient land so that as the institutions grow, Mr. Speaker, they can build and grow, Mr. Speaker, to become great institutions. They are today in court, Mr. Speaker, with this or the other land grabber. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, that is the importance of this land amendment bill, to ensure that these institutions, first of all, have titles, and they have titles in their name, so that anybody tries to play any monkey games, Mr. Speaker, on these institutions, they are, excuse me, they are able, actually, Mr. Speaker, to provide evidence that the land belongs to them. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank colleagues who have taken time to speak to this. I hope we can conclude on this particular bill, vote on it, assented, and the President and the Ministry of Lands, Mr. Speaker, can go on to give these public institutions their title deeds in their name, Mr. Speaker, so that nobody ever dreams of altering, Mr. Speaker, the ownership of land that is owned by these public institutions. With those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply. Thank you.
Majority Leader, are you making any requests for postponement of the putting of the question, or do we proceed?
Mr. Speaker, in accordance to Standing Order number 66, I wish to request that as we shall agree on and advise. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It is so ordered. Next order.
Order number 18, the Intergovernmental Relations Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 12 of 2024, second reading.
Now, at the interruption of debate on the 8th of August 2024, Senator Moses Kajwang was on his feet and had a balance of 5 minutes. I don't see him here, neither do I see on my dashboard any senator wishing to contribute to this bill. I will therefore call upon the mover to reply.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply on this Intergovernmental Relations Amendment Bill. This actually, Mr. Speaker, is an act of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, to provide for the anchoring in law, Mr. Speaker, of various organs of the devolution family, many of which, Mr. Speaker, up to date. And I say this in my moving notes, Mr. Speaker, that it's unfortunate that all these years down the line, we have not been able actually to anchor some of these key institutions in the devolution family in law. And I gave an example, Mr. Speaker, of the COG, the CAF, and the rest, Mr. Speaker. Institutions that are very key. Each time we go for either legislative summit, devolution conference, Mr. Speaker, we keep on giving the assurance to all these institutions that Senate will set in place the legislative mechanism for enshrining into law, Mr. Speaker, these institutions. Yet, unfortunately, we haven't been able to do it. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to appreciate colleagues that have spoken into this bill, especially with regards to COG and the establishment of the County Assemblies Forum, something which we have promised from 2016, actually, Mr. Speaker, when I first attended the first legislative summit in Mombasa. And 8 years down the line, Mr. Speaker, is when we are doing it. Therefore, I hope our whips, Senator Sifuna and Senator Alwale, Mr. Speaker, can help us to conclude on this law, actually, before we next meet members of the County Assembly. We owe it to them, Mr. Speaker, to give them an anchor institution where they can converse about issues that affect the institution and so on and so forth. Mr. Speaker, the same can be said also of the COG, an institution where Senate has learned to live with, if I may put it that way. In the very first day of existence of the Senate and COG, Mr. Speaker, we were not the best of friends. And there are many things that we have said, including yours truly here, about the existence of COG. But we have come of age, and we have come to appreciate it on the important role, Mr. Speaker, it plays in entrenching devolution in our country. All the successes and the challenges that devolution continues to face, Mr. Speaker, are actually better addressed with COG and Senate working in sync. And therefore, to be able to pass this legislation, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we anchor them in law, Mr. Speaker, will be a step in the right direction. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to reply. I thank you. Mr. Speaker, in accordance to Standing Order number 66, 1, I wish to place a request before you that we defer the putting of a question, Mr. Speaker, until such a time as we'd agree jointly together on the subject to the availability, actually, of delegations needed to vote. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It is so directed. Next order.
Order number 19, the Heritage and Museums Bill, Senate Bills number 8 of 2023, second reading.
The Chairperson, Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. That order is deferred. Next order.
Order number 20, the Agriculture and Food Authority Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 13 of 2023, second reading.
Senator James Murango. That order is deferred. Next order.
Order number 21, the County Hall of Fame Bill, Senate Bills number 18 of 2023, second reading.
Senator Miraj Abdullahi Abdurrahman. That order is deferred. Next order.
Order number 22, the Rice Bill, Senate Bills number 19 of 2023, second reading.
Senator James Murango. That order is deferred. Next order.
Order number 23, the Public Holidays Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 21 of 2023, second reading.
Senator Karungo Thangwa. Not present. That order is deferred. Next order.
Order number 24, the County Assembly Services Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 34 of 2023, second reading.
Senator Mohammed Chute.
Madam Speaker, I'm not ready to go with this one now. Thank you.
I thought Senator Mohammed Chute is in the House.
Yeah, Speaker, I'm not ready. I have just said it.
You're not ready?
Yes. Thank you.
We'll defer that particular order. Next order.
Order number 25, the County Public Finance Laws Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 39 of 2023, second reading.
Senator Kathuri Murungi. Not in the House. That order is deferred. Next order.
Order number 26, the Energy Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 42 of 2023, second reading.
Senator Edwin Sifuna.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Speaker, as you may know, I am a member of the Senate Energy Committee. I rise to move this amendment bill as a proud member of that committee that is chaired by the Senator for Nyeri, the Honorable Wamatinga. Honorable Speaker, in March of 2023, at a sitting of that committee on energy, there was a resolution by the committee to conduct an inquiry into the high cost of electricity. Mr. Speaker, this is an issue that many of us in this House have interacted with. Honorable Speaker, this is an issue that had, at that particular moment in time, occupied many discussions around the country. When we began this process, Honorable Speaker, at the point at which this inquiry was initiated, Kenyans were buying Kenya shillings 100 at that particular moment in time would get you only 3 units of electricity, Mr. Speaker. That in fact, out of 100 shillings, 51 shillings were going to taxes and other charges and levies. Mr. Speaker, the committee did conduct a proper inquiry, including meetings with various stakeholders. I remember the then Minister for Energy, the Honorable Chirchir, stakeholders from Kenya Power, from Ketraco, stakeholders from the independent power producers, and others appeared before the committee. And Mr. Speaker, there is a report of the committee that was, there's a report of the committee that was prepared in September of 2023. I don't recall the exact date when it was tabled in this House, but Mr. Speaker, it is a matter of record in this House that in fact that report has been tabled before this House. Honorable Speaker, if you allow me to go through some of the observations and recommendations of the committee, and I do this because those observations and recommendations out of that inquiry are the ones that informed the proposed amendments to the Energy Act in order to seal some of the gaps that we found as a committee. Honorable Speaker, at the on page 7 of the report where it has the chairpersons forward, and allowed me just to read. Honorable Speaker, one of the things that the committee noted is that there is a general opaqueness in the disclosure of the beneficial owners of power-producing companies, with the majority of them listing companies, foreign companies, as shareholders. There was another observation, Honorable Speaker, at paragraph number 12, that the dispatch of power currently done by KPLC is not based on least cost merit order. Therefore, preference is not given to the cheaper power producers. Honorable Speaker, another important observation that informed the amendments is that at paragraph 20, you will see the committee says that some power purchase agreements provide for mechanisms of discounts once a certain threshold is met. For example, Lake Turkana Wind Power Limited offers 50% of the energy charge rate once they attain the discount energy threshold. And Lake Turkana Wind Power did appear before the committee, in fact, in a meeting that was held in this very chamber, and attested to this, Honorable Speaker. They were, in fact, protesting that Kenyans were being denied this benefit, yet that the benefit is actually woven into the power purchase agreement. If you go to the recommendations, Mr. Speaker, on page 8, flowing all the way to page 9 and 10, there's a recommendation there that Kenya Power should dispatch power based on merit order, giving preference to the cheaper power producers. Honorable Speaker, this amendment bill is not complicated and it's not long. Mr. Speaker, there are only 3 proposals in this particular amendment bill, and as I have read to you the recommendations and observations of the Committee on Energy, they actually all flow from those recommendations and observations of the committee. If you look at clause 2, Honorable Speaker, of the amendment bill, I have proposed that an amendment be inserted in the Energy Act immediately after section 134. So this will be the new section 134A that requires a generating entity to enter into an energy purchase agreement to sell electrical energy to a licensed entity specified in the 3rd schedule. And then we go to what that a generating entity must consider when entering into such an agreement. Honorable Speaker, we have introduced the principles of public finance enshrined under Article 201 of the Constitution into the decision to enter into an energy purchase agreement. And these principles, Honorable Speaker, are openness and accountability, public participation in financial matters, good governance to ensure that public funds are used in a prudent and responsible way. Yeah, manifestation of opaqueness in how people determine whether we in fact need to enter into fresh power purchase agreements. So, Honorable Speaker, we have introduced a requirement there that prior to procurement of electrical power, there has to be a feasibility study that is conducted to identify whether there is enough demand for electricity purchase which cannot be met by the existing production. Honorable Speaker, we were told, if you look at your power bill, there is something called a capacity charge. That capacity charge is charged on every consumer of electricity for all the capacity that has been contracted by Kenya Power to supply power. And that capacity means, Honorable Speaker, every time you issue a license to a power producer, for as long as that capacity to supply is there, we are paying for it whether they are actually dispatched or electricity is actually bought from their generating units or not. So, Honorable Speaker, the committee felt, and this is what informed my amendment, that before you give any other person a contract on purchase of power so that they are setting up any new plants, a feasibility study must be conducted to tell Kenyans that, in fact, the existing capacity cannot meet the requirements at the particular moment. Honorable Speaker, if you look at 134A 3B, there is also a requirement to ensure the process of procurement of electrical energy complies with the procedures set out in the Public Procurement and Disposals Act. Mr. Speaker, what we have seen in the past is there is really no openness in how these people who hold these power purchase agreements ended up as suppliers to Kenya Power, because the public is seldom informed, and there is no information at all when they are being procured, on what terms, and it requires an inquiry of the House, such as the one that we conducted, for us to even know the terms that they have been given. So, Honorable Speaker, we have introduced that amendment to ensure greater transparency. Then, Honorable Speaker, as was noted by the committee, it is something that doesn't make any sense, that you have cheaper available power, but yet the person who is responsible for dispatching electricity at Kenya Power decides to go for more expensive sources of electricity, such as those thermal generators, Honorable Speaker. And evidence was given here, I have alluded to it, by Lake Turkana Wind Power themselves, that in their PPA, and we go to see that PPA ourselves, if a certain threshold of uptake is reached, we can enjoy as high a discount as 50%. But as of the time when they were appearing before us, that threshold had never been met, because for some reason, and Kenya Power themselves will explain to the public why that is the case, they are never given that priority to be able to pass that benefit to Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, there is a proposal there again to tie the hands of Kenya Power so that priority is given to those who generate electricity through renewable technology. Honorable Speaker, this morning, the team from Talo, Kenya, appeared before the Senate Committee of Energy to discuss the field development plan for the Lokichar Basin. Honorable Speaker, from the evidence that was given by the management of Talo themselves, there is a recognition across the world that now people are moving away from fossil fuel energy, and that in fact we are struggling. The reason why the field development plan and the exploration in Lokichar Basin has delayed, Honorable Speaker, is that funding and money and credit for the development of oil fields have dried up because of the increasing awareness on the need for us to cut down on fossil fuels, and many people are now moving towards investment in green technology and green energy. So they are struggling. The management of Talo themselves told us today the money has simply dried up. There are very few investors who are now willing to put money into oil exploration. Because if you look at places such as the EU, Honorable Speaker, and other places, there has even been a moratorium that has been put that beyond 2030, vehicles that operate using diesel or oil-based fuel, Honorable Speaker, will be phased out, and therefore there is a move towards greener sources of energy. So, Honorable Speaker, we want even Kenya Power to give priority to generating entities that generate through renewable technology. And we gave the example of Lake Turkana Wind Power, we have Kipeto as well, and even the solar generators should be given priority as opposed to those who generate using heavy fuel oil, which is very expensive. The last amendment, Honorable Speaker, the second or third one, Honorable Speaker, on the disclosures, the committee noted that many of the IPPs that have, Mr. Speaker, can I get some? Honorable Speaker, as was noted by the committee, many of the IPPs that hold power purchase agreements as we speak today, Honorable Speaker, have not fully disclosed their ownership. And in fact, it was a struggle for us here in the Energy Committee to even get to know the beneficial owners of some of these companies. There is a great suspicion amongst members of the committee and in fact the larger public that wherever there is secrecy as to the ownership of a company, we would not be surprised, Honorable Chair, to find, and as a lawyer you know, people hiding behind shell companies and claiming that this is a company that is operating out of India, for instance, and yet the true owners are people here in the ministries and in government. So therefore, Honorable Speaker, one of the recommendations we have made is that the Kenya Power, or whoever it is that will be running our grid, can only award a power purchase agreement to an entity that has fully disclosed its beneficial owners. So that, Mr. Speaker, it should be standard practice. If you have something to hide, then we shouldn't be doing business with you. You should be able to tell us outright who the owners of the company are. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, would you believe it that even as a committee, we were very shocked to find out that we do not know as a country how many of these power purchase agreements exist. Nobody tells us, even as Parliament, how many of these power purchase agreements exist. There are people sitting on power purchase agreements just quietly. And, Honorable Speaker, we are paying for capacity charge for things that we are not even aware of, where they exist and where they're generating from. So, Honorable Speaker, the committee felt it important that we have a register of all the power purchase agreements that it has entered into. And, Honorable Speaker, this must be published on its website and in the annual audit reports of the purchasing entity. The register in that subsection, Honorable Speaker, we require it to be prepared within 90 days from the date of operation of this section and be open to inspection by members of the public in accordance with Section 5 of the Access to Information Act. Honorable Speaker, lastly, we have provided that the authority shall not approve an energy purchase agreement which fails to comply with all these provisions that we are introducing. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to move. And I want to request the Honorable Stuart Mazayo to second.
Mr. Speaker, I second.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question that the Energy Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 42 of 2023, be now read a second time. I will invite members to contribute to this bill, and from my dashboard, Senator Gloria Magoma Orwoba.
Chair, thank you for that. Before I add my voice on this, Chair, it's very hot in chambers. I think you have seen Senator Sifuna sweating. I don't know whether the AC is not working. And Chair, we have seen a lot of renovations happening. And this is why, you know, the question is who is approving these renovations? They should ask us. We'll tell them we want the AC, we want this. But Chair, there's a lot of funny things happening out here. We have a new red carpet, I don't know, new lights, new what. Chair, it is imperative that as a house of oversight, we also learn to oversight ourselves. This budget that is being spent on the funny things that are happening in this building, Chair, we need to know, because you know, I'm sure you sit in the liaison committee. We are opening the financial year with pending bills, which none of our chairs of committees are able to address. So when we sit here and we are sweating, and yet they have replaced the red carpet, which nobody asked for, Chair. Nobody asked for a new red carpet, but they have replaced it. We need to understand that oversight should begin in this house, Chair. So if they can put the AC on, we would really appreciate.
Clerk, could you make arrangements such in terms
kindly,
to have the AC
because of all the things that we didn't need,
Senator
the one
Gloria,
thing we needed was the AC.
Your comments noted, and I should have expected you to appreciate the fact that there is a refurbished chamber for you to utilize in the session. But
Chair, austerity measures, Chair. Austerity measures. You know, when we see a new red carpet, we wonder really, who's doing these things? You know, is it necessary? Who are the entrepreneurs? Chair, I would like to add my voice, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to add my voice on this bill that is being fronted by our senators from the broad-based government. Mr. Speaker, we have to start appreciating that this is the kind of robust engagements that we have to have in this house, Mr. Speaker. And for the first time in the history probably of the debate of this house, you can see that myself and Senator Sifuna and Senator Eddy and Mazayo, we are speaking the same language. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of independent purchase producers, electrical energy producers, Mr. Speaker. I think we have had a conversation of, first of all, the fact that it is not transparent. We do not know who these entities are. We do not know what they are producing, where they are actually supplying, Mr. Speaker. And it is time that we actually unveil that we actually make sure that Kenyans understand what is happening, Mr. Speaker. As you can see in the proposed amendment where they are saying that a generating entity may enter into an energy purchase agreement to sell electrical energy to a licensed entity specified in the third schedule. Mr. Speaker, what we are trying to address is that we finally are able to get value for our money, Mr. Speaker. We finally are able to understand why there are numerous blackouts, and we can hold people accountable, Mr. Speaker. So I want to first of all congratulate the mover of this bill, Mr. Speaker, because it is a timely bill, particularly because this is the time when we need to make the very unpopular decisions of kicking out the cartels. Mr. Speaker, the understanding of what we do in Senate, many people don't really get it. It's not just about bills and oversight, Mr. Speaker, but it is ensuring that we hold people accountable to the down to the grassroots, Mr. Speaker. So even the bills we bring here, it's not that we like debating, but it is to address the issues of the lack of transparency in government services, the lack of transparency in some of the procurements that we are having, particularly with these IPPs, Mr. Speaker. And so that is the reason why I am supporting this bill by Senator Sifuna. And I do hope that we have other engagements and other robust discussions, Mr. Speaker, due to this, what we call the broad-based government. I support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Roba. Senator Godfrey Osotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to also contribute to this very, very important bill, the Energy Amendment Bill 2023 by Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna. Mr. Speaker, I think this bill is long overdue. I have worked in the energy sector previously, before I joined politics. I used to work for the then Electricity Regulatory Board, which now transformed to the Energy Regulatory Commission, and now which is called IPRA. And this problem has been there. The issue of cost of power in this country. The cost of power, one of the factors that contribute to high cost of power in this country is this very expensive, secretive, and satanic energy purchase agreement between the Kenya government and some independent power producers. This bill, Mr. Speaker, will help us unlock the problem that has existed in this country for many years. For many years. So this bill will ensure that the so-called independent power producers who engage in this purchase agreement are known. So Senator Sifuna is seeking to resolve the problem of disclosure. We must know who these companies are, what are the faces behind these companies, what are the interests, what are the agreements say. It is not right that a government institution, Mr. Speaker, can enter into agreements with the individuals or private institutions without the knowledge of the people of Kenya. And Mr. Speaker, maybe this problem really highlights the main problem we have in this country. The main problem of disclosure of material facts in agreements of this nature. And I want to say that maybe we need to amend this to ensure that all these agreements are subjected to parliamentary approval. So I want to encourage Senator Sifuna to maybe look at the amendments and improve them further, to require that these agreements, because they affect our economy in a large way, must be looked at by Parliament so that the public interest is protected. Mr. Speaker, as I said, the amendment is going to give us disclosure of ownership information. Who are the owners of these entities, and how much are they drawing from the people of Kenya for their personal interest, and what is the cost at which they are selling electricity to our public institution, particularly KenGen. So I think it is very timely, and I want to encourage members, particularly on the aspect of disclosure, to support this bill. Mr. Speaker, without disclosure, then, as it has been stated in the memorandum of the bill, then we are not sure what this money is doing. Whether this money is being used for money laundering, whether this money is part of tax evasion schemes or corruption. So disclosure will help us deal with all the social issues around the non-disclosure of these agreements. Mr. Speaker, I don't know why it is so difficult for the government to provide information on some of these things. We struggled with SGR up to now. We do not have clear information on some of the contracts of SGR. Mr. Speaker, we are now struggling with we have struggled with these independent power producers, and even now, the biggest debate in this country is about Adani matter, which I can see the chairman of Roads and Transport is smiling. He has done a good job, and he's also my member of CPIC, to try and deal with the problem. Mr. Speaker, I think it's high time that we demand that all such major agreements, particularly between government and private investors or individuals, must be disclosed to Parliament and must be processed in this House, Mr. Speaker, because they affect our people, and we exist in this Parliament because we represent the people under Article 1 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the other important issue which I want to agree with the mover of this bill is the matter of ensuring that these agreements are aligned or comply to the principles of public finance management under Article 201 of the Constitution, on matters of openness, on matters of accountability, on matters of public participation, on matters of generally good governance in managing public resources, prudent management and responsible management of public resources, on matters of sustainability, whether the agreement is sustainable or not. So we want a situation whereby such agreements, the value for money must be assessed. And therefore, the proposal to ensure that the Public Finance Management Act is complied with, I think is a laudable proposal in terms of ensuring, for example, public participation. Public participation aligns to what I've said earlier, the involvement of Parliament in this process, the involvement of stakeholders in the energy sector in this process is very key. So I want to thank the mover for also including that. The other aspect, Mr. Speaker, is compliance to the best practices in procurement, particularly aligning this process to the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act that we already have. How do we identify these IPPs? Do we just wake up and say so-and-so will be an IPP and he becomes an IPP, or there must be a competitive process, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, these are the same questions we are asking on the airport deal also. Is it, do you just wake up and say so-and-so, bring a proposal, or you open the tender to competition so that you have as many people bringing proposal on how they can manage some of these utilities? Mr. Speaker, I think this is a very commendable amendment which I support. Mr. Speaker, the other very important requirement is a requirement that that these companies or these so-called IPPs, the agreements are made public on their website, in their annual audit reports, so that Kenyans can look at it and make their concerns known, so that the value for money can be assessed and that Kenyans can now get a good deal from it. Because, Mr. Speaker, we have to state very clearly that the energy purchase agreement is a rip-off. This country, the people of this country have been ripped off for years, Mr. Speaker. And some of the people who own these IPPs, Mr. Speaker, we are told, are either former government officials or people who worked for these entities, Mr. Speaker, these public utilities, like Kenya Power, KenGen. Mr. Speaker, even as we discuss this bill, we need also to find a way of how we can deal with those who have stolen from us through expensive power purchase agreement. As we support this bill, Mr. Speaker, we should also look for the thieves. I call them the thieves, Mr. Speaker, because this is a stealing, who have stolen from us for years, Mr. Speaker. They must be brought to book. We must know the faces behind it, and they must account for all the money they have stolen from Kenyans through these satanic and expensive agreements which they have signed with the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, also the provision to ensure that Section 5 of the Access to Information Act is an important amendment. And access to information, Mr. Speaker, is a constitutional right in this country. But this right is not, it has been curtailed, Mr. Speaker, in many of these public offices. And this is a piece of information that should be easily be available. I was surprised that even the committee had difficulties accessing these contracts, Mr. Speaker. It should not be a problem, Mr. Speaker, to assess a contract between investors and the Kenyan public through some of these public utilities. So these amendments, Mr. Speaker, will make it easy for the public to access some of this critical information and be able to process it, ensure that it is aligned to the interests of the people, it is aligned to good practices, and it has value for money. So these amendments, Mr. Speaker, are going to ensure that the long-standing problem of expensive power purchase agreement by between the Kenyan government through its key utilities, energy utilities, and the independent power producers is handled. And as I said, Mr. Speaker, even as we pass this bill, I want to encourage the committee not to tire, to continue investigating this matter so that we get to know who are these dark forces behind the IPPs. Why is it impossible to bring to book these people? Are they living on this earth or they are living elsewhere, Mr. Speaker? If there are people who are living on this earth and are in this country, why is it so difficult to get them? Mr. Speaker, if you start calculating how much this country has lost through these IPPs, some of them were started during President Moi's time, to date, many years back, Mr. Speaker, you will probably find that this is the money we need to build another airport, and we don't need to bring Adani here. We can get money from these criminals, Mr. Speaker, to build an airport and to build other utilities. Mr. Speaker, I want to commend Senator Sifuna for this very, very important amendment and a very bold amendment. I know the owners of IPPs will be out to fight these amendments, but I want to ask Senate to stand firm. Mr. Speaker, this House has, in the recent days, been seen in the eyes of the people as a house that is serving Kenyans. This last week, what the Committee of Roads and Transport did really gave Kenyans another fresh sense that we have an institution that is working for us. Now, this one is the second one, Mr. Speaker, and I want to encourage our committees to deal with issues that are impactful to the people of Kenya, so that this Senate is seen to be working for the people of Kenya. And one of the things, Mr. Speaker, if you allow me to digress a bit, is that we know we are going to have DORA coming back to us, where there is a recommendation that we should reduce shareable revenue, Mr. Speaker, from 400 billion to 380 billion shillings. Mr. Speaker, I think this is the day that Senate needs to rise up and say no. We cannot be told that every time we have a drop in the national revenue, it is the Senate, it is the devolution that suffers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we need to stand firm and protect our counties and demonstrate that Senate does not exist because of politics alone. We exist to support our counties and to protect our counties. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to support this bill and encourage the other members who are going to contribute to also support this bill so that we can unlock one of the major problems we have been having in the energy sector. That is expensive power purchase agreements, which lead to high cost of power, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Thank you, Senator Sotsi. Senator Samson Cherage.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I rise to support this Energy Amendment Bill 2023. And I congratulate Senator Sifuna, the Senator of the great people of Nairobi City County, and also one of the longest serving Secretary General of ODM, the longest at the moment because others have been moved out of the office, Chair, and I hope he survives longer, although nowadays he's trending on some interesting grounds. Mr. Chair, and I am happy that in as much as he's a first timer in this House, he continues to prove himself that he's a man of the moment and still. And I can see, Mr. Speaker, the minority leader is excited because he's a ranking member. And also is one of the senior lawyers in this country, but not a ranking member like you. So, Mr. Speaker, allow me to support this amendment. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, the former President Uhuru Kenyatta formed a task force to review power purchasing agreements. One of them, the biggest challenge in the cost of electricity in this country, has been the buy-in by the independent power producers that sell electricity expensively to Kenya Power and Lighting Company. While, Mr. Speaker, there are many challenges that Kenya Power and Lighting Company, from in my village in Kapkeben in Mosoriot Township, in Nandi County, Mr. Speaker, out of 24 hours, Kenya Power decides to switch off electricity for almost 20 hours in a day. In fact, it becomes worse when it rains, because Kenya Power is like they now remove electricity because it's raining, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, the challenge and the cost of doing business in this country, and you know me, I use domestic power, not even talking about the access of power within Nandi County and across the country, which continues to be a big challenge. I know for Senator Sifuna, he might have a privilege that most of the city is covered by electricity. But the biggest elephant in the room, Senator Sifuna will tell you, is out of 24 hours, 3/4 of the time there are blackouts, and it affects the business, even the small businesses within Nairobi City County, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, as we try, I know I've noticed, Mr. Speaker, that the demand and supply, there is a thinning of 4%. And the cabinet the other day, although I want to thank the National Assembly, they declined to give a nod for opening of power purchase agreement through IPPs because it was not clear. It's still opaque, Mr. Speaker. While we agree we need a constant supply of electricity, that is not a justification to buy electricity expensively and in an opaque manner, Mr. Speaker. And that is what the former president initiated through the task force that was appointed to review power purchasing agreements. And that report, Mr. Speaker, was given back on 28 September 2021. Mr. Speaker, in that report, the government had proposed that the cost of electricity will come down by 3%. If that would have come, Mr. Speaker, the cost of buying tokens, be it prepaid or postpaid by customers across the country, by domestic customers, by industrial customers with that leverage that Kenya Power and Lighting is trying to provide, Mr. Speaker, including the street lighting, the heavy users of electricity in this country, Mr. Speaker, apart from domestic users, the cost should have come down by 33% after that report, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it was resolved, and I would request that the Energy Committee, which I think Senator Sifuna sits, unfortunately I can't see the chair of Energy Committee, should tell us that the recommendation of that report, Mr. Speaker, was that within 4 months at the submission of that report, there should have been renegotiations of power producing agreements, or power purchase agreements, sorry, in renegotiating of IPPs, because it was very expensive and opaque, Mr. Speaker. I want to request, as I support the amendment by Senator Sifuna, that the Energy Committee should tell us the outcome of renegotiating by Kenya Power and Lighting Company. And on the issue of power purchasing agreement through the IPPs, what was the outcome, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, are you aware that there are many power purchasing agreements that remain unsigned? It should have been cancelled. So I want to encourage the Energy Committee to look at this issue, because this is how money is being stolen. It is violating under Article 201, Mr. Speaker, where we are talking about openness, transparency, and accountability in financial matters in the Republic. Because if up to today there are PPAs, power purchasing agreements, through independent power purchasing suppliers to the Kenyan Power, who sell to Kenyan Power Lighting Company, onward transmission to domestic and industrial use, Mr. Speaker, then we have a problem as a country. I think as we support this amendment of the Energy Act by Senator Sifuna, the Energy Committee should tell us if these power purchasing agreements that were unsigned have been cancelled. And that is corruption, Mr. Speaker. If it works, looks like a duck, then it is a duck, Mr. Speaker, or an ugly swan, as somebody would say, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in that report, in line with this, there were supposed to be reforms within Kenya Power and Lighting Company. We are not yet to be told what happened with the investigations into the faulty transformers that were being left here in Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, in Industrial Area. No one can tell us up to today what happened to faulty transformers who was held accountable. There are many primary schools, even in Bomet, in Nairobi here, in Nandi, in Migori, in Kilifi, Mr. Speaker, that have perpetual faulty transformers. No one has told us the audit on those faulty transformers, what became of it. You remember Senator Stewart Matsayo in the last session, we raised you and cry over faulty transformers. Up to now, no one has been arrested or charged in court or the fate of those faulty transformers here in Nairobi. I shudder when I think that faulty transformers might have been even supplied to you or to Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. We need to know the outcome. And therefore, the reform of Kenya Power and Lighting Company, because the problems of power purchasing agreements and even independent power producing agreements, Mr. Speaker, is the lethargy, the opaque nature the Kenya Power and Lighting Company has. And therefore, even in that report, the task force report of 2021, there was a proposal that we must restructure and clean up Kenya and Power and Lighting Company management, Mr. Speaker, because they are perpetuating systemic corruption. You do token purchase, the people who are doing postpaid, there are people who are doing prepaid, Mr. Speaker. There are people who do not have electricity. What can you say? Is it not corruption? When our whole school or our whole village goes without electricity for months, yet Kenya Power find it's normal. I think it is shocking. And Mr. Speaker, I saw the CS in charge and the good brother of Senator Sifuna, CS Opio Wandai, saying that cabinet secretary, saying that Adani is now doing a purchase agreement on that issue. And then, and I think the chair of roads is familiar what we are talking about, Mr. Speaker. They were arguing that the reason they want to improve the transmission lines, it has become old. And therefore, I want to agree with Sifuna, when you don't communicate the clarity of information, the policy of government should always be crystal clear. Say that when CS Opia Wandai today says there is an engagement or privately initiated plan by Adani to provide support through even purchase of transmission line through Bomet all the way to Awasi, Kisumu, the improvement of power lines, the pylons are grown, Kenyans to understand. But if you do these things in secrecy, it violates Article 34, 35, Article 201, Mr. Speaker, that Senator Sifuna, you know Senator Sifuna and the House, we should not be too prescriptive. The reason we have to make prescriptive laws, Mr. Speaker, and you are a learned senior in this country, having been classmates with Senator Sifuna, is we have to be prescriptive in this country. We have to tell you, don't do this. It is because of our bad manners as a country. That is, it is, because what was it added? It is already in Article 201. Why is it added to make public a power purchasing agreement through IPP? Until Senator Sifuna tells Kenya Power, no, you must do this, the amendment. That is the bad manners that we have in this country of impunity and corruption, Mr. Speaker. In that report, Mr. Speaker, the report of 2021 demanded that we do forensic audit. And I want to ask the Energy Committee through your office, Mr. Speaker, to tell us these power purchasing agreements through IPPs. There was a statement, Mr. Speaker, and I remember in the last session, there was a statement, an investigation done by this House that showed that you have a local company, IPP, it is a local Kenyan registered company, but is selling power to per kilowatt, Mr. Speaker, to Kenya Power in dollars. Yet it is a Kenyan company. Mr. Speaker, can you believe the impunity that is roaming around in this country, Mr. Speaker? The company is registered here in Kenya. The directors here in Kenya. The trade is domiciled here in Kenya, Mr. Speaker, but they sell the power to Kenyan Power and Lighting for distribution and transmission through in dollars, Mr. Speaker, or in pounds. Those are the people that forensic audit should have been done and be charged in court, because that is public rip-off of a hard-earned money, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to say in this issue of openness on power purchasing agreements, especially through independent power producers, personally, Mr. Speaker, I don't have a problem. We are not saying that IPPs or people do independent power producers in this country, Mr. Speaker, they should not do business. But we want them to do clean business. We want them to abide by the rules and the law of the Republic of Kenya. If I establish a solar power generating company in Kilifi or a wind energy and I intend to sell to Kenya Power and Lighting Company, Why don't I sell it in Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker? And that is the openness, the accountability, and transparency, Mr. Speaker. And as the chair of the Senate caucus, and I'm happy you attended that session of open governance, Mr. Speaker, one of the issues Senator Sifuna, through the Speaker, was legislative openness. We must be open in terms of legislation and implementation by executive, Mr. Speaker, going into the future. So even as Mr. Speaker, and I want to say, the cabinet and the parliament should not allow opening of PPAs until we agree on some ground rules. Because I can go and register my company in Bomet and decide to tell to Kenya Power in dollars. It will be a public ripoff. And I want to ask the Secretary General of ODM, CSOPO and I is your immediate former member of ODM. Kindly advise him that the only way he can redeem the image of Kenya Power and Lighting Company is to make sure the IPPs that has been signed for the last 10 years are laid bare in the public. And the truth shall set us, all of us, Mr. Speaker. I am happy on the issue of Adani. He has come out quickly. He didn't wait for the airports, the way we went for the airports, Mr. Speaker. Even we could not access documentation. We had to use power of oath, power of intimidation, power of coercion for production of documents on Adani Jkia deal, Mr. Speaker. And that is why you had the young man the other day on Gen Z protest saying, and I'm happy that young man, he has got a sponsor. He was saying, uwanja wa ndege umeuzwa. Imeuziwa Muhindi, was being asked, umeuziwa nani? And we thought it is a joke. Only when the issue appeared before the Senator Chair of Roads, and I want to ask Senator Karungo Wadhangwa, the way he's standing on issues of Murima, strongly, he should stand on this investigation of Adani, Mr. Speaker. He should fear nobody. The Bible says, the Bible says, Mr. Speaker, don't fear that kill the body and the soul, that kill the flesh and the body, but do not fear only who kills the soul and the spirit, Mr. Speaker. I want to challenge Senator Karungo Wadhangwa. The way he is strong standing on matters of Murima, he should stand strong on the issues of Adani. We want to know what really happened to the airport, Mr. Speaker, including the Kerenga airstrip in Kericho. Has it been sold? That is the question many Kenyans have. What is the issue of private partnership in this country under the Act, Section 4 and Section 2 and Section 40, Mr. Speaker? I want to challenge Senator Karungo Wadhangwa, Mr. Speaker. The way he spoke with authority on Sunday in Kirinyaga, he should speak to these matters with the same figure and authority, and he should behave like a miracle senator for who he is, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, point number 5, on this issue of moratorium, we should not lift a moratorium on the issue of power purchasing agreements through IPPs, Mr. Speaker. And that is the point. Before we lift a moratorium that was imposed in 2021 by the report and the task force that investigated the issue of power purchasing agreement and IPPs, Mr. Speaker, we must agree that there are ground rules that needs to be set, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for example, Kenya Power and Lighting Company buys from KenGen, Mr. Speaker, at 5 shillings and 30 cents per kilowatt. But when they buy from independent power producers, my brother Senator Eddie, they buy it at 195 shillings. Yet KenGen sells to Kenya Power at 5 shillings 30 cents. But when they get IPPs, these Mikoras, these corrupt individuals, Mr. Speaker, who are being protected, they buy it at 195 shillings per kilowatt, Mr. Speaker. That is more than 190 shillings from KenGen. And this is a public report, Mr. Speaker, that Senator Sifuna, we need to know who these companies are, what is the contract that we are doing, Mr. Speaker, going into the future. So, Mr. Speaker, I agree there should be a register that should be open to the public. Let us know who are these IPPs, what is the engagement of power producing agreement, Mr. Speaker, so that Kenyans can access affordable electricity, Mr. Speaker. We cannot be talking about climate change and green energy if the person in Nyatike, in Mikori, cannot access electricity. They will buy Koroboy and they will pollute the environment. Or they will fell down the trees in somewhere in Bomet, Mr. Speaker, In Jebalungu, they will be forced to go to the forest, cut down and light the fire. But if we can produce power to be accessible and affordable to everybody, Mr. Speaker, even in Tindret, where some of us come from, even in Nandi, Mr. Speaker, we must make the power in this country to be affordable. Even as we talk about cottage industries, Mr. Speaker, there are many people, my people are farmers, Mr. Speaker, of milk, dairy. We want to process and do our own farming. There are many people who are doing chicken farming or poultry farming. They need electricity. There are people who are processing dairy farm inputs, Mr. Speaker. They need electricity, Mr. Speaker. So I think this amendment is long overdue. I want to thank the Deputy Minority Leader, Minority Whip, that is important, Mr. Speaker. I have noted that there have been serious renovations. I don't know whether it was the cost of the JNC. That is why we have been doing renovations, Mr. Speaker. We are asking the other day that we need to, Mr. Speaker, to be, what do you call these issues of being magnanimous in terms of spending, Mr. Speaker. But we are seeing opulence even in Parliament, Mr. Speaker. The other day, the JNC ran us out of town because of opulence. Now, Parliament, you can see that we didn't need a new carpet. Mr. Speaker, our committees, in fact, I wish the money that was being used to do renovation of paint, of carpet, we should have been given to committees to go and visit Naivasha, CGDC Naivasha, go and visit Wanainji in Kisumu, in Bomet, and ask them what is the challenge with electricity. We should be visiting projects in Bomet, in Nandi, in Migori, in Kiambu. Mr. Speaker, can you believe we don't even have funds as a Senate Public Accounts Committee to visit even Dandora Stadium here in Nairobi, or even visit Toi Market? But we have, Mr. Speaker, but we have money to buy a new carpet. We have money to do a paint, Mr. Speaker. I think as a Parliament also we must have our priorities right. I had written through your office, through the joint services, Bwana Nyandiere, to provide evidence, Mr. Speaker, because we cannot be saying we are oversighting others, yet we cannot oversight ourselves, Mr. Speaker. Is the House aware that the pending bill of Senate is around 500 million? You sit in liaison committee. You cannot do even a public hearing on this matter, Mr. Speaker, even as we go for public participation. Mr. Speaker, with very many remarks, I want to thank Senator Sifuna for bringing this amendment. I hope we'll very fast-tracked. In the spirit of the broad-based, the President will sign it into the law, and we can be able to discuss the issue of power purchasing agreement, Mr. Speaker, going into the future, so that we can ensure, Mr. Speaker, the issue has been resolved. On the PPPs, I want to propose, Mr. Speaker, to Senator Sifuna and all of us in 2 minutes, that we need to relook about private initiated investments in the country, especially under PP, private partnership, Mr. Speaker. We can see the debacle of Adani, both in energy sector and in aviation sector, Mr. Speaker. Let us review the law, even the regulations, Mr. Speaker. Say that when you are doing PIPs, you want to do privately initiated as an investor, Mr. Speaker. There should be the law that governs and ensure that there is accountability. Let us be open as a country. If Parliament today wants to do PPP, let the parliamentarians or the public know why, how, who they are, how is the financing model shall be, Mr. Speaker, so that we reduce this chaotic manner of responding to issues of Adani, Mr. Speaker. Because we have been told now it's moved to health sector, it is moving to the aviation sector, it's moving to energy sector. Please, I want to, through you, Chair, in conclusion, please, I send Senator Sifuna, kindly tell CSOP and I to be careful on this issue of Adani, because he is still your member, or former member. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Okech Eddie.
Chair, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to support this amazing bill by the great senator of Nairobi and also still my SG in the ODM party, because the mischief that the senator of Nandi is trying to bring is that my SG now is the SG of the broad-based government. That one is now akin to interfering with my certificate. in 2027. So I want to guarantee you that this is the SG of ODM, who is still the custodian of my ticket. But Mr. Speaker, on a more serious note, this amendment is a very serious amendment. Mr. Speaker, EPRA, in the year 2022, just after COVID, I remember it was May, when EPRA released its daily systems, operations, and dispatch analysis report, which did indicate at that time, Mr. Speaker, that the Kenyan demand for electricity had just hit 2,051 megawatts. That, I think, was the highest the country had by that time. And remember, that was at a time that we were just coming from, we were just in a post-COVID era, immediately after the economic meltdown that was brought by COVID. But, Mr. Speaker, that demand, if you looked at it against the national capacity for electricity, we had actually overshot our capacity at that time. Because even by 2018, Mr. Speaker, the capacity that we had in the national grid, Mr. Speaker, was 2,351. There is something that number showed us. And it's important because the country is gearing towards trying to get to a 2030 national grid of about 15,000 megawatts. And you find that it is only in Kenya that, number one, Mr. Speaker, the cost of production of electricity by independent power producers, Mr. Speaker, is very low. Yet, when it hits the national grid, we get the highest electricity tariffs that then affects our people. Number two, Mr. Speaker, the utilities that we have in our country at a national level are some of the most well-resourced utilities that cover their entire variable cost, yet they remain loss-making utilities, Mr. Speaker. Now, to add salt to injury, Mr. Speaker, the Kenyan taxpayer who ends up going to the market to get energy for whichever reason, whether it is commercial or domestic, Mr. Speaker, still faces the issue of low quality service, even when it comes to that. We sometimes get people with serious problems of specs of different meters that are not working. Different meters are also not reflecting their payments. There's a lot of low quality service that we still see in the power consumption in this country, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, I cannot stress enough the importance of power in our country in terms of actually making sure that our national total productivity factor, in terms of the output that we get from every single citizen in this country, how important this is, Mr. Speaker. To give you perspective, Mr. Speaker, today a French kid consumes 50 times more electricity than a Kenyan kid. Mr. Speaker, a kid born in the United States consumes 70 times more electricity than a kid born in Kenya, Mr. Speaker. Yet, competitively, Mr. Speaker, across the globe, Kenya has placed itself at an edge of using proper clean energy to the extent that almost over 80% of our energy is from renewable and clean sources, Mr. Speaker. What is the problem? This is where I come back and laud my friend and my very good SG, Senator for Nairobi, for dissecting the root cause of this problem. And that root cause, Mr. Speaker, is lack of public accountability and governance in terms of the consumption, production and consumption of power and energy in our country, Mr. Speaker. To be very specific, Mr. Speaker, the transparency throughout the procurement process of power has been wanting seriously in Kenya. And this amendment, Mr. Speaker, seeks to address this core issue of that transparency and accountability, not only in the governance structure, but also in the entire procurement process, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I come from Migori County, where I happen to be very lucky to be born around Gogo Falls. And Gogo Falls is one of those Kenyan facilities that produces a lot of power, Mr. Speaker. But I can tell you that up to today, 95% of my village mate, where Gogo Power is based, have got no electricity in their homes. If you go to the other stretch, That is in Uriri constituency, Mr. Speaker. And if you go to the other stretch, in Nyatike constituency, the penetration of power in Nyatike constituency, Mr. Speaker, is less than 23%. Yet Gogo Falls is found within the borders of these two amazing and very productive constituencies. That is Nyatike constituency and Uriri constituency. The pathetic nature of lack of consumption of power in my county, Mr. Speaker, spans all the way to places like Kuria West and Kuria East, Mr. Speaker. If today you go to Masangora, where people are very industrious and they're in the border of Kenya and Tanzania, where tourism could be cultivated properly when you think about the use of energy to think about the entire security infrastructure of that county, Mr. Speaker. The amazing people of Kuria, despite their industriousness, still wallow in the miasma of having less than 25% of power penetration, Mr. Speaker. And this, I can narrate, goes all the way to places like Rongo, sub-county, to places like Awendo, where you'll find that an amazing industry called Awendo Soni, or the Southern Nyanza sugarcane industry, Mr. Speaker, is found. And yet the sugarcane growers and sugarcane cutters in those areas, Mr. Speaker, still depend, sometimes to extreme end, of using firewood to light their homes at night. And the question is not the question of capacity. The question here is the question of governance and transparency that can be able to make sure that the abundance that we have in this commodity called electricity can be able to percolate through every single home and all the industry that we have. So what does Senator Sifuna seek to do with this amazing bill? Which is why I want to urge the entire House to support this bill. The first thing, Mr. Speaker, we find that today Kenya Power has signed over 45 power purchase agreements. Yet if you look through the internet and through all government bodies, Mr. Speaker, the information to the public with regards to the details of those agreements are completely scanty. You can't find them. And why are these information pieces important for the public? They are important because, Mr. Speaker, you cannot have power purchase agreements without detailing the cost structure and the resulting prices of power as they should be. And this is at the core of what this bill seeks to address. Because when you can be able to allow the public interact with the cost structure in those agreements, then they can be able to further interdict and be able to give input on what kind of prices these contracts should then result in the cost of power in our country, Mr. Speaker. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, even then, the moment these contracts are hidden to the public and the details of those contracts are hidden to the public, Mr. Speaker, there's something called cost competitiveness. We cannot have serious cost competitiveness in the entire market divide of power in this country. Why? Because every contract is individualized and is hidden from the proper market value that it should have, so that anybody can choose to make the cost of power anything they want, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, this amendment is the core of making sure that we're going to have proper price reduction in the power sector, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, alongside the issue of cost of power, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of power stability and power quality within our borders. Mr. Speaker, you have seen a number of times, even in Nairobi recently and across the country, when you will be hearing from social media that you are going to face power blackouts. It has been announced by whichever body that you're going to face power blackouts. Yet, you do not have power to control when you'll get that power back. You do not have power to control how you can be able to get your alternatives. You do not have power to control how this is going to affect the payments that you already made to the national power grid, Mr. Speaker. To the extent that we can be able to figure out the impact of this lack of transparency on power stability and power quality, Mr. Speaker, this is the bill that we need. This is the bill that for the first time will be able to ensure that that procurement process of people who cannot be able to allow power stability when they are bringing them to the national grid, Mr. Speaker, to be guaranteed. The bill will give us that, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, there's something close to my heart, and I've seen it through this bill and through the lenses of the presentation by Senator Sifuna, that this bill will help us procure and also cure is the issue of safeguarding our environmental and our social priorities, Mr. Speaker. If we are not careful, despite the fact that as a country we are priding ourselves that we are leading in terms of clean energy, Mr. Speaker, the interaction with that with our environmental safety and social safety, Mr. Speaker, cannot be guaranteed if you cannot be able to interrogate the procurement processes. What do I mean by this, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, we have seen a number of times when Kenya Power wants to look at things like metering processes. Because of that lack of transparency, you will find that the procurement officers will then keenly and carefully choose to actually ignore the specs that are required by standard of law, to the extent that in many cases, people end up going to bring specs that are defective, are of low quality, that then ensures that our people cannot be guaranteed in terms of their safety. In a number of places, you hear about KPLC not being able to meet its targets in neighborhoods such as slummy areas. Reason being, they are defective metering systems that people can bypass, that people can sometimes connect, and then before you realize, you are seeing a lot of fire hazards in different places. In Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, we constantly see a number of fire hazards that if you were to go down and interrogate where those fire hazards are coming from, Mr. Speaker, you'll find that it's because of defective metering and defective specs that have been put in a number of access points of electricity, Mr. Speaker. And this is putting our people in hazardous environment, is putting our people in very serious social problems, Mr. Speaker. Toy market recently lost property worth billions. That's where Senator Sifuna comes from. I think 2 days ago, there was serious fire in Mukuru Kwajenga, Mr. Speaker. These places are facing these fires, and nobody ever explains the sources of this fire. But if you look at the kind of connections that we are having and connectivity that we are having, defective and default connections in our neighborhood, Mr. Speaker, occasioned by serious lack of transparency on the specs of meter systems and any other systems of connectivity that we need in our neighborhood, Mr. Speaker, you can cry over this country, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it is extremely important that that entire process is completely unlocked. And this bill chooses to enable the country get to the bottom line of this problem, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, along this is the structure of taxation on electricity with regards to the cost structure that is given to independent power producers, Mr. Speaker. This one is a very serious part of transparency and governance, Mr. Speaker. How does the national government choose to tell us which part of the money that they collect from KPLC and any other national grid providers comprises the taxation element and which one comprises the competitive revenue or competitive profit for these companies, Mr. Speaker? Because we have seen a number of times when KPLC complains, it does complain in form of we are being overtaxed and therefore we want to increase tariffs to respond to that taxation. But how is that taxation connected to the cost structure of their purchasing agreement, their power purchasing agreements with other independent producers? Because, Mr. Speaker, you can't tell me that out of 1 shilling, the government chooses to arbitrarily take 57 cents in terms of taxes from KPLC, and KPLC must throw that taxation back to the consumer and doesn't connect it to the cost of purchase or cost of production, if we may use that language, from the independent power producers, Mr. Speaker. The only reason why KPLC can use that impunity on Kenyans is if there is no proper transparency in terms of the agreements that it has had with every single private developers and private producers who are adding to its national grid. That is the only explanation, Mr. Speaker. And that is also tied squarely to being able to disclose the number of loans that KPLC and all the national grid suppliers can be able to argue in terms of the pricing of electricity, Mr. Speaker. Because otherwise, KPLC will just tell you that we took a number of loans here and there, and those loans, we helped XYZ developments. We were developing this utility at X cost, which is also not given proper detail, but just basic. And then before you realize, the cost keep on skyrocketing, Mr. Speaker. So in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I really want to laud and appreciate this bill that Senator Sifuna has brought into this House. And I hope that the senators in this House will see how important it is for us as a House to be able to build a functional element of the law that can be able to ensure that procurement processes of all power capacity is done through a very transparent process, which then in the end allows for a competitive, market-based, scientific production and consumption of power. And additionally, Mr. Speaker, this is the first bill, in my humble view, that will ensure that there is always public notice and public engagement on the intention to be able to sign contracts by independent power producers, and to be able to make sure that the public is always having a notice. I'm talking about the intention for power purchase agreements. Because without the public knowing about this intention, Mr. Speaker, that is how you end up in a situation where public is being invited on a conversation around a deal that has been done. Like the case for Adani, Mr. Speaker, despite the fact that the Minister for Energy or the CS for Energy currently has told us the capacity that Adani has, he's telling us the capacity that Adani has on the power production and consumption in this country at the age of Adani having been given the contract. So why is the public being invited to even give its views in the first place? If at the intentional moment, there was no deliberateness in terms of engaging the public. So this bill is going to ensure that when there is an intention to sign any power purchase agreement or any power deal with any kind of institutions within or without government in the corporate sector, Mr. Speaker, then the public is noticed on that intention. And therefore, the public can then go ahead and be able to contribute before an action is taken to give the deal to any of those private developers, Mr. Speaker. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, it is always important that when the public comes to engage in a public participation, it must have proper details in terms of information that informs robust contribution in that process, Mr. Speaker. This bill, as I finish, Mr. Speaker, gives the key and access for the public to be able to have details of contracts. So that when the public is engaging and making comment at any given period of intentionality, then it is giving comment based on data, based on science, and based on facts and figures on those power purchase agreements that are within their under.
Thank you, Senator Eddy. Lastly, Senator Karungu Thangwa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy to be back in this session. And Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this amendment. That is the amendment of the Energy Act, Mr. Speaker. And this amendment is not only talking about energy, it is about safeguarding the future of Kenya's economy, environment, and of course citizens, Mr. Speaker. Why am I saying so? Mr. Speaker, you know we use thermal energy in this country, or at least that is the major source of energy. This bill is trying to bring about renewable energy and technology, supporting renewable energy, and you know we are a country that recently passed a Climate Action Act because we want to be in the front line when it comes to matters climate change. And we can only achieve that, Mr. Speaker, by coming up with renewable energy like wind and solar. Mr. Speaker, I remember the first presidential address at the National Assembly, or the joint houses, Mr. Speaker. The president said that he's going to allow societies or groups of people to generate power and sell it to government, Mr. Speaker. I believe this bill or this amendment is going to assist in achieving exactly that. County government can come up with power generating activities so that they can also earn revenue, Mr. Speaker. A county government like Nairobi and Kiambu, which of course has a lot of garbage and waste, Mr. Speaker, they can use that waste to generate power. And then they can sell that power to the national grid. Then, whenever they use the power for their hospitals, their car parks, their schools, they can as well be paying less than what they're paying today, Mr. Speaker. And the money that they get from there, they can use it to build roads and other entities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I want to tell Senator Cherargei, because he mentioned when he was giving his contribution, I take up the challenge. I take up the challenge, Mr. Speaker, because I'm not easily coerced. I'm uncompromisable, Mr. Speaker. I'm intrepid. And by saying that, Mr. Speaker, I might be small in stature, but I'm intrepid at heart, and I cannot back down, because coming from an area or an era where people are referring to problems and other people are snakes, Mr. Speaker, I am saying that we shouldn't even deal with the vipers, Mr. Speaker. Vipers are small snakes. Let's talk about cobra. Let's talk about black mamba, Mr. Speaker. And these are the issues that you are raising whenever you appear even in our committees, like the issue of Adani, Mr. Speaker. That is a king cobra issue that we need to deal with, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to PPPs and PIPs, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when you look at this amendment bill, it's talking about public participation. And public participation, I want to make it clear. There's a difference between public participation and stakeholders consultation, Mr. Speaker. Public means you consult everyone, whether they're in that field, whether they use electricity, whether they don't have it, whether they have it, or whether they're not interested. They must have a say, Mr. Speaker. Because public participation, as it is in the Constitution, it talks about the people of Kenya must be informed, must be given details, must be listened to. And as you know, whenever we have public participation, we ask for written memoranda. We also ask for oral submissions, Mr. Speaker. This bill is saying that we must involve the public in decisions that affect their daily life, Mr. Speaker. Because this bill empowers Kenyans to have a say in how energy is procured, ensuring that, Mr. Speaker, their voices are heard, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the reason why we pay high bills when it comes to electricity is because Kenya Power get into contracts even when they don't need that power, Mr. Speaker. This bill is saying there must be a feasibility study before any contract is entered into to ask whether you need that power or you don't need that power, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when you do that, you're able to prevent the people of Kenya from paying high bills or from having exaggerated power connection fees, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when you talk about transparency and accountability, whenever you are having these companies that generate power, we don't know who the directors are. We don't know their names. Some people, even within the government, hide behind these kind of people to come and sell power or generate power and sell it to the government. You know, the government officials selling power to government. By making this information public, we'll be able to know who owns what, and we'll be able to watch them because we know them. Because if your name appears somewhere, Mr. Speaker, and they say you own this company, and then we see the way you live, you do not look as if you own something like that, we will know you're a proxy to someone, Mr. Speaker. So I believe this energy amendment bill brings about transparency and accountability. Mr. Speaker, whenever you have this kind of engagement where the government is contracting someone to provide energy, and this bill, as it is drafted, Mr. Speaker, is bringing about investor confidence. And when there is investor confidence, Mr. Speaker, people will be able to invest in such ventures, Mr. Speaker. It has been mentioned here, not once, not twice, that I'm the chairperson of the Roads and Transportation Committee, the committee that is looking into the issue of the PIP by Adani Group and Jkia, Mr. Speaker. And I'm telling you, the way we are going to handle this issue is going to either bring about confidence to those investors who would want to invest in this country, Mr. Speaker, and also to have trust, because you see, this government, Mr. Speaker, there is an issue of trust. And somebody said the trust deficit. Mr. Speaker, what we are trying to do is to tell the people of Kenya, yes, we are here for you, and we are going to stand for you, and we are going to do exactly what you do. Because if we do not carry our people along with us, we lose them along the way, Mr. Speaker. As I said the other day, we will find them at the finish line. And when we find them at the finish line, they won't be happy with us, Mr. Speaker. And we have to do exactly what we are mandated to do as the senators. We have to protect the interests of our counties, Mr. Speaker, and protect the consumer when it comes to power bills, KPLC. We have to protect the consumer whenever they're using electricity, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, without further ado, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill, and I thank the Senator of Nairobi because this thing, we needed it yesterday so that we can encourage counties to generate power and use it for their own utilities and agencies, Mr. Speaker. So I do support. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Karugu Thangwa, thank you for your contribution. Honorable Senators, there being no other member interested in making contribution, I'll call upon Senator Sifuna to reply to this bill.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to reply and start by thanking all my colleagues who have made contributions to the amendment bill, including my sister Gloria, who started by petitioning on my behalf that the AC be put on. I was sweating here profusely, Honorable Speaker, and I didn't know what was going on. Honorable Speaker, just in closing, this amendment is intended to just enforce transparency and public accountability of the electricity sector. KPLC themselves came up with the slogan, Mulika Mwizi. Honorable Speaker, the aim of the committee, and I'm very proud to be a member of the Energy Committee, we decided to shine a spotlight on the pain points in the electricity cost. Honorable Speaker, I want to assure members that every contribution that has been made is important as we learned from the interactions at the committee. Because our focus, for instance, Honorable Speaker, on the fuel cost charge, which was the highest component of our electricity bill, is what has resulted in some of these amendments that were proposed and some of the recommendations that were made by the committee. Honorable Speaker, the fuel cost charge accounted for about 25% of all our electricity bills. And this was because of KPLC preferring to uptake power or dispatch power from the expensive thermal sources. And I am happy because some people think that these discussions that happen in Senate or discussions that happen in our committees are idle talk. Honorable Speaker, I want to assure members of this House that I can already see movement in terms of implementation of these recommendations. And I must thank all the stakeholders, the Ministry of Energy, and of course Kenya Power and all the other stakeholders for trying to put in place some of our recommendations. I'll give an example of just 3 of them for the benefit of the House, Honorable Speaker. One of the proposals that we've made, and it is also a proposal in the amendment bill, is prioritization during dispatch of power based on merit order giving preference to the cheaper power producers. Honorable Speaker, I saw a report in the newspaper just a few weeks ago that there was an increase of 88% of the uptake of power that we import from Ethiopia, which is one of the cheaper sources of power, Honorable Speaker, at Kenya shillings 8 only per kilowatt hour, which is a bit more expensive than the Kenya shillings 5 Kenya shillings that Kenyan charges, but it is one of the cheaper sources. There was an increase of 88% for the 6 months to June of this year compared to a similar period last year. That was a recommendation. If you look at page 56 of the committee report, it appears at paragraph number 219. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, there has been a policy shift that KenGen is actually now moving to purchase or put in place power storage facilities. These are batteries to be used. These are batteries to be used in order to ensure that what they call the intermittent sources of energy from solar and also the wind farms that are not available throughout the day and night, Honorable Speaker, can continue to be useful to the grid even when the sun is not shining or the wind is not blowing. Honorable Speaker, lastly, there was a recommendation at paragraph 210 of the report of the Senate Energy Committee that the Ministry of Energy, in consultation with all thermal power plants, should institute a mechanism for purchase of heavy fuel oil in bulk within 90 days of adoption of this report. And I am happy to again report, Honorable Speaker, that this is being done. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to assure members of this House and members of the public that what we do in our committees is not idle talk. And in fact, with the coming into force of this law, there should be a move towards cheaper electricity in the country. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply and request that the putting of the question be deferred to a later date pursuant to Standing Order 66.3. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
As requested, Senator Sifuna, the putting of the question is deferred to the next sitting of the House. Now, let's call the next order. Clerk.
Order number 27, motion, report of the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations on a petition to the Senate by Mr. Samuel Esapa on behalf of residents of Turkana County concerning the state of insecurity in Turkana County.
In the absence of the chairperson, Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations, Senator Cheptumo, that motion is deferred. Next order.
Order number 28, motion, report of the Select Committee on County Public Investments and Special Funds on its consideration of the audit report of the water service providers for the year ended 30th June 2019, 30th June 2020, and 30th June 2021.
Similarly, in the absence of the chairperson, Committee on County Public Investments and Special Funds, Senator Sotsi, this motion is deferred to the next sitting. The next order, please.
Order number 29, motion, report of the Select Committee on County Public Accounts on its consideration of the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Tharaka Nithi, Homa Bay, Kakamega, Kirinyaga, Makueni, Meru, Bomet, Murang'a, Nandi, Nyamira, Nyeri, Siaya, Vihiga, Wajir, and Samburu County Executives for the financial year 2019-2020.
Similarly, the chairperson, County Public Accounts Committee, is not present in the House. the motion is hereby deferred. Next order.
Order number 30, motion addressing the challenge of power purchase agreement renewals and electricity supply in Kenya.
In the absence of the chairperson, Standing Committee on Energy, this motion is similarly deferred to the next sitting of the House. Shall we all rise, honorable members? Honorable Senators, there being no other business on the order paper, the Senate stands adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, 18th of September, 2024 at 9:30 a.m.